Good morning, everyone. Hope you've got your coffee and you're ready to roll. We've got a great event for you today. My name is Tom Suter. I'm the CEO and founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and we're really happy to have this event today, our ATARC Hyperautomation Virtual Summit. So I believe this is the first one we've had on this topic, so we're really excited to do that. For those of you who don't know, ATARC stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. ATARC is a nonprofit that facilitates collaboration between government, industry, and academia in order to accelerate technology modernization initiatives. And we've been doing a lot of cross-agency collaboration. We used to do it on site, but we've been virtual here lately. Hopefully that can change. And we have learning, we do market research, we have working groups. So we've got a lot going on here in ATARC, especially over this last year. We'd love to thank our corporate sponsors, Appian, Amazon Web Services, BMC, and ICF. Thank you for that and diving in on this hot topic today. And I'd like to thank you for joining us. I know everybody's got lots of options, very busy at work here before the holidays, and we appreciate everybody that's joined us today. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have some tech talks. We're going to have some panels. We're going to throw in some poll questions. Please answer them. We get a lot out of them. It really helps us in coming up with new events. And also it makes you eligible for CPE credits. So that's like a big deal. But so anyway, I'd like to introduce our first speaker of the day for our first tech talk. And it's going to be Michael Beckley. Michael Beckley is a friend of the program. He's one of the founders and the chief technology officers over at Appian Corporation. Can we get your video there, Michael?
Morning, Tom.
Good morning. Good morning. And good to see you again. Are you out of your Tyson's office, your home office, resting?
Yeah, I'm out of my basement office in Falls Church. Yes. So
that's fantastic. And before Michael gets going, I'm very familiar with Appian and the CEO, Matt Calkins. It's rare that you have a company that originated here. And I used to run into Matt at the Panera, the now defunct Panera in the Hyatt. So how long have you been going at this?
We started Appian 21 years ago and took the company public back in 2017. And, obviously we've been proud to serve our federal customers for most of the last 20 years.
Well, fantastic. I'm looking forward to your talk today.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Thanks for the invitation. Always happy to join the ATARC audience and look forward to being able to join you all physically again in person soon. But while we're doing this virtually, I had put together some slides for you, so I'll bring that up right now. See if we can get that shared. And I'm just going to talk briefly about today's subject, hyperautomation. So keep this pretty casual and light, but to define our terms to get started this morning, when we talk about hyperautomation, what we mean is combining humans, bots, AI, and all your data in the cloud and unifying them in a single workflow to achieve 10x process improvement. So that's just setting the stage here, what hyperautomation is and what's new about it. This concept of augmenting people with bots or AI isn't itself new, but the concept of unifying all these things together, that's what makes hyperautomation so special and possible today. And at the heart of it all is simple concept of workflow. The idea that we're going to be able to orchestrate these different human workers and digital workers in a unified workflow. That's the backbone, that's the foundation of what makes hyperautomation possible. These techniques that allow us to marshal the right resources at the right time and keep humans in control, not just in the loop, but actually have them making the key decisions and augmenting their potential with the efficiency and consistency for quality and assuring the right outcomes. But all with workflow at the foundation. But there's another foundation that makes this all possible, and that's low-code data. And this is something that Appian has pioneered. The idea that your innovation and automation efforts should be unified on a common data platform. That's not so unusual. But what is with Appian, it's a virtual data platform and it's low code. So without database programmers, without API programmers, now you can actually create a unified and virtual view that breaks down all the data silos that used to keep you back and hinder digital transformation projects. Now with Appian, you don't need to migrate your data. You can still create a unified view and work with that remote data as if it was local, because with Appian we can intelligently synchronize it and create this set of relationship maps across your different entities. So here you're looking at a service request and you're pulling information from Salesforce, you're pulling information from your custom databases on the correspondence that you might have already had with that service request, and being able to merge them to create even new data concepts that are the foundation for how work will be created and ultimately delegated and automated by different automation techniques. So it's really powerful. This is something new we announced this year. So to keep with the work from home theme, I thought I would try to describe hyperautomation more. Oh, sharing is being paused. All right, so let's, sorry, a little technical difficulty here as my IT department is trying to update my system. Let's skip that and go back to sharing. So even though we're home, we're still all managed. And let's bring back our sharing. Apologize for that commercial interruption. Let's see here. Let's stop the sharing and start it again. All right. So back on track. Hopefully the IT department doesn't try to force an update on me in the next few minutes. But what I was trying to say here was we all dealt with kids at home. And the challenge with getting work done is, kids want to go out and play now that you can go outside and play again, but you still have that mess to clean up in your room. You still have the schoolwork that needs to be done. And so, what are you going to prioritize? How are you going to get organized, get through the paperwork and still get out and play, right? So hyperautomation is, ending that choice and allowing you to actually get the help you need to do it all. So with low code RPA, with Appian, we include unlimited RPA, cloud-based, FedRAMP certified, secure RPA. This is a topic, though, I think was pretty well understood. So I'm not going to belabor too much about RPA. What's special here, though, is to help you organize your work and work with systems that don't have APIs to access them. Typically you'd have to go buy bots, and they cost maybe $5,000 to $10,000 each from a traditional RPA vendor. With Appian, it's included in the platform, and it's unlimited bots for one price. So it's truly the case that you can use bots to help with every organizational activity to augment all of your workers and not be held back by that RPA tax. And then what I'm going to talk more about today is integrating AI and handling that document processing so we can get that 10x improvement. And then when it comes to that schoolwork, that homework, the paperwork of running a federal government, a lot of that comes down to paperwork and document processing, and how do we actually automate that work if we can't structure that data, which is coming in as unstructured documents, unstructured handwriting, even check marks, data tables inside of forms. And those forms have challenged traditional OCR because you need to change you need to train a model for every form. And if you're dealing with an invoice, for example, those can come in from different formats, and that breaks your model and you have to retrain. So we use artificial intelligence to actually overcome those challenges, eliminate the need to pre-train models, and dramatically improve the accuracy and speed with which you can get straight through processing. And so the end result is there's now an opportunity to unify how document processing happens across many different processes, and bring people into the process to ensure that even if a document can't be 100% read, here we can read most of it, and then a human just needs to click on the one field that the AI didn't get, and the AI gets smarter the more it gets retrained by humans. So bringing those things together. And so underneath the hood here, what you're seeing is an AI model that's able to classify and learn and get better at classifying documents and assign them to the right process, and then that extraction accuracy augmented by humans. Because what's what we're doing here with workflow is we're not trusting any one automation technique on its own. We're We're allowing people to be in control to make sure that we get the right outcome. And this isn't hypothetical. This is quite real. If you take just one example of we have over 40 federal customers today in the United States, and probably 100 public sector agencies globally. At the Department of Labor, we're live with over 15 applications. They're typically used for case management, mission critical systems like getting temporary work visas. Tens of thousands of external users rely on the system every day. And they're already seeing over 18 million in annual savings at this early stage. So it's quite real. That hyperautomation is quite possible, and you can start using it and see how it's being used in agencies. If you go to appianworld.com, you can see many other case studies live in action about these types of ways in which hyperautomation is being realized in large organizations. Now, one thing that's unique about government that I'd be remiss to not mention, and that's security and resilience and reliability. And all of that's dependent upon cloud. And Appian runs on the AWS GovCloud. Appian is itself FedRAMP certified. It's not just relying on AWS's certifications. And when you trust our managed service, we take care of all the upgrades and networking and backup, and your responsibility is pretty much just building your apps and some of your own security and compliance framework as well. But we handle most of that for you, inheriting those controls and allowing you to achieve a continuous ATO type of operation so that you can continue to innovate and introduce new applications, new automations, and not have to start from scratch every time. In fact, your agency may already have an ATO with Appian since we're so prevalent across the government today. And you'll hear more from AWS later today. A couple other things just to emphasize: we have a posture in security which is second to none, with of course all the encryption you'd expect, but at more advanced security controls. We hire white hat hackers to attack the system. We have extensive data loss prevention technology behind the scenes, and your data is always isolated from even other government agencies in a single tenant architecture. So it is secure by design and secure in every way we possibly can make it. Security is an arms race we can't necessarily win, but we can't afford to lose it. So we're always investing in making Appian Cloud the most secure, robust platform for your hyperautomation projects. And here's just a look at some of the other Appian government customers in the US and around the world. So last, I'll say you've already seen how we have a book called Hyperautomation. We've made it available to all of you participants for free. You can get that download of your electronic copy from the ATARC communications we've sent out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write me directly at cto@appian.com. Thanks again, Tom.
Thanks, Michael. A couple questions for you while we have you. This seems like right for the Technology Modernization Fund. So are you guys like working on some use cases that the return on investment seems pretty good? I mean, you have 10x, you probably have some really good use cases maybe in the commercial side, but it seems like it's ripe for the Technology Modernization Fund.
I think that, yeah, I think it certainly is. We're working on digital transformation projects, modernization projects at FDA, at Department of Labor, like I talked about, at HHS, at Department of Education. I mean, anyone is doing grants management, grants modernization. There's a number of projects out there that could tap into the Technology Modernization Fund, as well as just recognizing that when you invest in a low-code approach to digital transformation, you are eliminating a lot of the tech debt in your organization, because now the platform itself allows you to stay current. I mean, Tom, I just saw this report from 18F on modernizing the courts, and they were saying, how bad it was that the courts' case management systems are run on open source because it's obsolete code, obsolete languages. And then they're proposing that they rebuild it all again, custom and open source. And when you use a low-code platform, we take that tech debt. So 10 years from now, it'll be still current because we've modernized all these data systems for you.
Right. Well, I think there's a unique opportunity with Technology Modernization Fund to do these kinds of projects, and you guys are right there. Thank you, Michael Beckley, CTO of Appian. That was a great talk. I enjoyed that.
Thank you, Tom.
Great. Next up, we have Mr. Isaac Cousins, and Isaac is a senior staff writer over at GovLoop. He's a fantastic writer. Can you come on, Isaac? And you are in the Big Easy, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Working from home today and an hour before y'all, so still waking up a little bit, but doing well.
Yeah, how's it going down there? I haven't talked to you in a little bit.
Yeah, everything's good. Unfortunately, Lake Charles, on the other side of the state, Southwest Louisiana, has had a little bit of hurricane struggles. We were actually not hurricane struggles last year, more recently flooding. So we did a little bit of reporting around that, and we were talking to somebody who worked in the water management system. But fortunately, this side of the state's been all good, and not not infested with the same cicadas that I understand DC has been. So can't complain too much.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to your panel.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll ask my fellow panelists, Rachel and Chris, to turn on their cameras if they can. We can get this right underway. So really looking forward to this. Of course, Tom, like you said, with the TMF and the infusion of funding, there's a lot of focus right now on digital services and connecting with citizens, making sure that the federal government can really be a leader when it comes to citizen experience. So first of all, I'd like to just introduce our panelists briefly, and then I'll have you both give a little bit more detail about what you actually do at GSA in addition to your current focuses and projects right now. So first of all, we have Rachel Flagg. She's a digital strategist for the General Services Administration. We also have Chris Naswamati, Naswadami, I believe. I'm sorry, Chris.
That's great. That's very close.
That's close.
Perfect.
Okay, good. I was going off a GSA webinar I saw online. So you're a business development specialist, and I know you're both at GSA. So Chris, we can start off with you, just talking about what your area of expertise is here and what you do at GSA.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Again, Chrisanne, it's Neswadomi, but Chrisanne is just fine. And I have worked with GSA for about 20 years. I've been working in the contracting field, and then recently I've moved over to business development. So now I'm a business development specialist, and I actually support our Region 7, which is in the Fort Worth area. Right now, I happen to be in Louisiana as well. I'm visiting Shreveport, and it's been very rainy, but there's sun today. But anyway, we try and support our contractors and get them in touch with our federal customers and try and create those relationships to help them sell their products and get our customers what it is that they need. So I think recently, one of the things that maybe fall along with what you guys are talking about here is that we are using more of those robotic process automation type tools to help us. So one of the things that we do, we have a team that will look for opportunities that the federal government has posted, say like on, you might recognize it from FedBiz Ops, but now went to beta.sam and it'll be moving to sam.gov, but that's where the federal agencies will post their requirements. And also there's another platform we have that's called eBuy, which is where our federal customers that know they want to use a GSA schedule contract solution will post their opportunities there. So what we have been doing is going into those opportunities every day, trying to find those opportunities that correspond to the types of contractors and solutions that we have in our region. And then we create an opportunity in what we call Salesforce, which is pretty much our database to capture all these opportunities. And then we forward it to customer service directors throughout the nation, worldwide actually, so they can follow up with their customers that have these particular needs, which, as you can probably imagine, takes quite a bit of time, something every day. So we're real excited. It should be coming out, I think, by the end of this month, but it's one of these bots that they have created to do that sourcing portion for us. So, we're still working out all the little details on how it's going to work specifically, but that will go through the sourcing, automatically check beta.sam.gov for those federal opportunities, and automatically check eBuy to find those opportunities, go ahead and put it in the system and make it a opportunity to send over to those other customer service directors. So that is going to be a huge time saver. That's freeing up 3 people that were just doing sourcing to now do more business development and following up with the customers and getting out to do more of what we really need to be focused on. So that's along with a lot of other bots that I'm sure Rachel will be able to talk more about, but that's one specifically that is helping us in what we're doing right here. And again, that's what we're excited to see come out maybe by the end of this month.
Perfect. Well, look forward to hearing more about that. And Rachel, going over to you, same question. Just how would you introduce your activities and involvement at GSA?
Thanks, Isaac, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me today. So I am a digital strategist at GSA's Office of Government-Wide Technology Policy. My focus is development and implementation of federal web policy and guidance to improve digital experience, both at GSA and across the federal government. I also lead the Federal Web Council, which is composed of federal agency directors of web and digital communications. And so the council works together on a lot of efforts to coordinate communications across the federal government. One of the things we focus on also is coordinating digital communications around incidents of national significance, such as natural disasters or COVID response. And it's really important to improve trust with government, to make sure that we all are coordinating and speaking with one voice and referring people to authoritative sources of information. So, if we have some natural disaster, we work with agencies to make sure that they know they should be pointing people to FEMA instead of building their own guidance around that. A big focus of GSA and the Web Council over the past couple of years has been implementation of the 21st Century IDEA Act. GSA was tasked with a lot of things to do in that act, and we also, of course, are managing our own web modernization efforts here. So the intent of the 21st Century IDEA Act was really to improve customer experience with federal websites and digital services. And the law calls out 8 specific areas of focus. It says that government digital services should be accessible to individuals with disabilities, have a consistent appearance. They should be authoritative and not overlap with or duplicate any legacy websites. They must contain a search function. They must be provided through an industry secure standard connection. They must be designed around user needs and provide the option for a customized experience in order to complete digital transactions in an efficient and accurate manner, and be fully functional and usable on common mobile devices. And so there's not really anything new in here. Much of what was in the 21st Century IDEA Act, it just codified into law many things that have been part of federal web policy since 2004. But to support agencies in this work, GSA has published a ton of guidance. We've hosted lots of training. You can find a lot of it on digital.gov. And we also communicate regularly with our various communities of practice. GSA hosts probably a couple dozen communities of practice on pretty much any aspect of technology and digital service delivery, from content, infrastructure, cloud, user experience. Also, a requirement in the law was that GSA develop website standards, and we've published a maturity model to help agencies implement the U.S. web design system. The design system is really a system of principles, guidance, and code that helps agencies improve the design and functionality of our digital sites and services. And so the design system has been a huge help to bring some more consistency to how federal websites are built, and bring some common functionality there. So we're meeting that consistency marker with that. One other thing that my team at GSA does is we also lead the government-wide IT accessibility program, and we support agencies with conformance to the Section 508 standards. And so in addition to 21st Century IDEA, accessibility was #1 on the list. The recent executive order on diversity, equity, and inclusion has also shined a new light on this important issue. And, making accessibility into everything we do is something we think about every day at GSA. And when you make things more accessible, they actually become more usable for everyone. For example, curb cuts and sidewalks were initially designed to help wheelchair users more easily cross the street, but they also help a person pushing a stroller or a traveler pulling a rolling suitcase. So, there are some concrete things that we can do to improve the accessibility of our digital products, sites, and services across government. First, really, is to help our content creators understand how to build accessible content and systems from the ground up. And GSA offers a ton of resources to help agencies in this space. Our Section 508.gov website has detailed guidance on how to create accessible content in websites, and you can also find extensive training resources on both Section 508.gov and digital.gov. The second piece of that is to include the right technical requirements into our contracts to ensure that all the IT products and services we buy comply with Section 508. And GSA offers a tool called the Accessibility Requirements Tool, or ART, that helps agencies find the right language to plug into your contracting documents. So an ART is available on Section 508.gov. So I kind of stop now.
Perfect. Well, yeah, we can definitely dive into all of that in plenty more detail. I believe we have another 25 minutes here, so we can get going in the question and answer portion of this. Before we do, I'd like to remind the audience that we have a question and answer portal open for you all as well. We want to hear what you want to know about. I see we have a couple of questions in there already. We will definitely touch on that as we get to the end of this section. We also have polls that we'd love for you to answer, and that's what'll help get you your CPEs as well. So Alyssa, if we could push the first one there, leave that up for the audience to get to. That's how satisfied have you been with your agency's citizens experience with the shift to a remote or hybrid workforce? So Chris Ann, I'll go back to you. When we look at these projects that you talked about, how does a digital workforce shift things, and how does automation fit into this digital revolution that we're seeing going on throughout government right now? And I think you're on mute, so.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say, speaking on behalf of the whole government, no, but as far as I have been very impressed with the way things have happened working remotely. We were very much into teleworking before everything happened. And so it was not a big stretch or a difficult thing to go to complete telework. One of the, I guess the areas that have affected us most doing business development, where we're used to going out to visiting our customers and having a lot of that face-to-face interaction, was not being able to travel. So I think we've just come up with different ways to try and do that. Forms like this, these virtual meetings. Like I said, we would go visit maybe our contractors and get a tour of their facilities and see exactly what it is that they do and their products that they offer. And through that, then we would find out about their customers and who's buying it, and then maybe go on customer visits with that contractor. So that definitely came to a screeching halt. So one of the things that we started doing is using zoom.gov as one of our platforms, and we would come up with virtual tours. So we would talk to a contractor and say, look, could we set up a time to tour your facilities? And we're talking probably not exactly what would fit the definition of all the different requirements, but it could be taking your laptop around or your phone, showing us what it is that you're doing. What we would do then, just trying to expand it and reach more of our customers, is go back out to our customers that maybe had a need for prefab buildings, for instance. So they could join in on the call, actually see the products, the location, and be able to ask those questions back and forth as if we were in a, one-on-one situation. It's still not the same as a personal visit, but we are able to invite so many more people and include them on that to spread the word about what our contractors can do for them. So in a different way, it's expanded our outreach and ability to connect with people. They've had different things where we've had robots that can disinfect rooms, and they'll do a live demonstration of that. So our customers can see as they're thinking about opening up their buildings, what can we do, to make sure that we have a safe work environment. So, doing things like that. We've included training, like where we would go out and meet with our customers, federal agencies. We're doing that like on a monthly basis, and having that type of training where they can get the certified, the contracting officers can get those certified learning points, CLPs, that they need. And then also, again, let them know what all GSA can offer to them. So, it's like trying to come up with ways we can still do what we need to do, reach the people that we want to talk to, but, using this new environment. So,
Right. And I'm curious, I always have to remind myself whenever speaking to people from GSA, it's not every other federal agency. GSA is, of course, a testing ground for some of the latest emerging technologies when it comes to bots. GSA has a robust RPA program.
yes, they do.
Right. So when we do look at that automation side of things, does that change how digital workflows actually happen, as opposed to, I mean, you talked about a process where previously somebody would have to go through and scrape all of the remote results themselves. I mean, I can just imagine what a difference it would make if that all is digital.
Oh, we are so looking forward to seeing that, because like I said, it's just in the beginning stages. So we haven't really, been able to see it yet, but we are very excited because like I said, that's an all day, everyday type of job. And it's going to be interesting to see where the robotics are able to make that determination of what's a good fit, because that's normally something you have to be familiar with the product lines and where this would go. But from all the demonstrations I've seen, it is amazing, and we are thrilled with the results just of our testing. So we are really anxious to see that go out. And like I said, that's going to free them up to do all the other things that we just never get around to doing, to the actual contact with the people, instead of just sitting there going through and trying to find opportunities and, put them in the system. And that's all manually done. So I think that is going to be, we're really looking forward to it. We'll just say we're excited.
Right. That is exciting.
Mhm.
So Rachel, going over to you, I know you had mentioned your work on the 21st Century Idea Act and some of the other accessibility standards. First of all, what is the progress on implementing the 21st Century Idea Act, and what are some of the latest developments there?
Yeah, well, so this is something that we've been working on for a while now, and the thing about digital transformation is it does not happen overnight, right? This is a long-term culture change in many ways, and as with many things that come out of Congress, there was no funding attached to 21st Century Idea. So, part of the work that we've been doing is to, kind of figure out how we can build the business case, to request funding, to do a lot of this modernization work at GSA. I think some of the things that maybe we have a little easier than others. You mentioned, the shift from in office to remote work. I actually was hired at GSA in 2009 as a virtual worker, which means 100% remote. And I'm on the West Coast. The rest of my team is in DC. And, over the past several years, GSA has hired a ton more people, all remote. We have people from working all over the country, especially in the tech space, because really that work you can do anywhere, So this transformation was really not, from my perspective, it it hasn't really changed so much how we work. In fact, I think it's made it easier in some ways for me anyway, because I'm no longer the lone voice on the speakerphone when everyone else is in a conference room together. Like we're all on, our Google Meet or Zoom or whatever. And we've been kind of working virtually for a long time, and so for back to 21st century idea, we've done a lot of work at GSA. I feel like GSA is really a proven ground for a lot of this stuff, and I am a big believer in doing things ourselves first as a model to help the rest of government move along. And so GSA has again a lot of web properties, and so we've been doing a lot of work to kind of tighten our web governance and really look at our content and our inventory of digital systems. And we've done some data calls with our site owners, and identified some areas of focus that we really need to improve on. And so we have several working groups now that we have folks from across GSA who have stepped up to kind of help us implement a lot of the requirements in the Act and take a look at our content and figure out kind of where we can consolidate and maybe shut down some sites. We have particularly in the tech space, because we have a lot of people at GSA who building websites is what they do, and I feel like when you have a hammer, every problem is a nail. So it's like, oh, we have this thing, let's build a website for it, and that's not always, I think, the best way to do things. And so we're trying to kind of shift that mentality and get people to think about, building more portals where we have broader access to different kinds of systems, and really streamlining our inventory. So we're looking to save money there by, consolidating and shutting down websites and porting content and consolidating content. And so that's really been our big focus over these past couple of years. And of course, we work with through the Web Council and our communities of practice too, with all the other agencies. We've published a lot of guidance on digital.gov related to 21st century idea. We've been doing a ton of training, and all our webinars through digital.gov are recorded. And so, we have a vast library of training resources for agencies as well. So,
yeah,
I was just
absolutely.
going to jump in there too. One of those things that you're talking about, consolidating the websites, that's so true, because, just for example, GSA.gov is big. I mean, there's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it's hard to find exactly what you're looking for. And one of those things that we're recently been doing, and again, I'm geared more to the acquisition workforce, but they're called acquisition planning packages. And where in the past you would go to, say, each category of item that you were looking for, and they'd have their own page and, maybe a buying guide or some information about it at that location. And so they've come up with one page that has all our, broad categories listed, but then they'll include things like, samples of documents to make it easier to do procurements, buying guide, guard finder tools, all sorts of things that are centrally in one location where previously you would have to go and search them out individually. And so that when you were mentioning that, I'm like, yes, I can really see the push to try and bring all this great information, but more together one place. So I do think that's something I can see improvements on.
yeah, and I will say, I think content is a resource that's really undervalued. I think that people take content for granted, and I think that people think it's easy to just write something and throw it up on the web. But content management as a discipline is actually quite difficult, especially when you're working with an organization like GSA, which is so complex and has so many different things that we do. And we have many different teams, each working on kind of their own little piece of the puzzle. And one thing that we've been really working on is trying to bring those teams together and look at our content holistically. Everybody thinks they can write, and writing for the web, though, is really a different discipline. It's really different from the way that we were all trained to write in school. Like in school, you were tasked to write a 500-word book report on a book you read, and if you only had 300 words worth of stuff to say, you still had to write 500 words. And so we learned, I think, to write and really, fluff up things. And then when we get to publishing on the web, it's totally different. And it's really about stripping things down to their core essence and being really clear and concrete and walking people step by step through a process so they can, find what they need and do what they need to do. Like, people don't come to government websites to browse around. It's like, hey, what's GSA doing today? Like, nobody cares. Like, I need to buy something, or I need to, learn about FedRAMP or whatever it is. And so, it's really, I think it's something that's the resource that we really need to train more people in how to write for the web and work together to really streamline and consolidate our content, because on the web, less is more. Like, if we have 17 pages about how to buy stuff from GSA, that's not helping anybody, right? It's just making things more confusing for people. So, bringing content together and learning how to write in a way that, because people don't even really often come to agency websites. Everybody starts at Google. Google's your homepage now, right? So learning how to write for search, so that in gaining a good understanding of your customers and figuring out what are the words people use to search for my thing. And then you write your content using the words of your customer. So when your customer goes to Google and types in whatever, blah, 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 they find your thing. They don't find 17 pages that talk about your thing in all these different ways, and none of them make sense, right? So, I think content is one place that we really have some work to do. Like, when you go to Google, all you see is, here's the search box, because that's why people go to Google, is that they want to search for something. And you go to a federal site, you see, pictures of the secretary or like ribbon cuttings. Like, nobody cares about that. That's not why we're here. We're here to serve customers. People don't like to interact with us usually. They usually have something that they have to do and they're not super happy about it. And so our job really should be to focus on what people really need from us and to organize our sites around those customer top tasks. A great example is the VA. I think they have done a fabulous job of really focusing their content around the needs of veterans. They worked with the U.S. Digital Service a few years back and kind of built this prototype called vets.gov, and they did a ton of user research and they stood up this site just focused on veterans, and they tested it, and then they looked at all the data, and then they ported over all the stuff that works to the va.gov site. And now the va.gov, if you go to their homepage, there's not pictures of whatever. There are real top tasks. Why do people come here? It's easy to find things. There's stuff is above the fold and it's written in plain language. And so my goal when I grow up, I want to be VA. They've done everything right there. So
as a writer, that's music to my ears too. Yes, way too many 5-page minimum college essays. So Chris Ann, going over to you. I mean, I think a big part of what Rachel was saying is being able to connect with people through what you're providing. And you had talked about kind of the same goal. I mean, making these into 1-pagers as opposed to 18-pagers and having people know what they're getting, whether that's through a Zoom call or through an in-person meeting. So what best practices have you developed for making what you do accessible to customers and citizens?
I think a lot of what we're doing is like we're talking about going back virtually, trying to set up those types of product demonstrations, tours, meetings face to face through, the virtual means. We've been doing podcasts like where we do a 5 or 10 minute interview with one of our subject matter experts, and we have those commonly asked questions that our customers have. Well, let's just go over those, since we don't have the ability to just be out there talking with people as we happen to be there at the base with them because we're on another visit. Just have these things readily available, so when someone has that question, we can make it available to our customer service directors, who can then share with our end users that need that information. So
Definitely.
I think so.
I love that. Thank you. And then Rachel, I'll ask you relatively the same question. And then right after that, just I think we have 8 minutes left, so try to get to a few of the audience ones. But just quickly, what are some best practices for accessibility when you're talking about those services?
Um, well, a few things I think I mentioned. Really training people who create our content and our digital systems on how to build accessibility in from the ground up, I think is really key. We have, I think one of the biggest struggles is we have people who don't really understand how to do that, how to structure a document, or how to, properly add an alt tag to an image or whatever. And so, I think doing a lot more training with our workforce, because, everybody creates content now and a lot of it ends up on the web. And so we need to really help people understand that it's not that hard. And, a lot of the newer tools like Office 365 has a built-in accessibility checker, which you can have running in the background and will tell you if there are issues in your document. So, the technology is getting much better, and helping people, figure out how to build things right the first time. So we're not going back and trying to retrofit is huge.
Yeah.
And also I think coordinating across agencies, we have a lot of, like at GSA, we do so many different things, but getting people to coordinate internally so that we are speaking with one voice, and not publishing so much content. Less is more, like streamlining things, making them shorter, easier to understand. I think we just have too much content out there now, and I keep going back to that, but yeah, that really is a huge thing. Is
Right.
People shouldn't have to wade through pages and pages to find what they want. We need to be better about working together and building clear, concise content around the key things that people need from us. They don't need to know every single thing that we do. The web shouldn't be our place to, talk about every single thing. We need to focus on the things that people really need from us the most.
Definitely.
And that's what we need to spend our time and attention on.
I appreciate that. Well, Alyssa, I think we can push the second poll question and get into some audience Q&A. I think we have time probably for one of each, and then I'll get a brief takeaway from both of you. So Chris Ann, first of all, have you seen any new administration changes when it comes to automation? I think that's an interesting question.
Oh, that is. I think a lot of the things, it's still fairly early on that we were working on as far as these bots to get to where we are. But you can definitely see, I think right off the bat, a lot of more emphasis on green, sustainability. I've already seen a lot of my contractors coming up and saying, okay, I have this biodegradable plasticware that I know is going to be a big push with the Biden administration. Can you help me get this out? So I think our vendors are definitely reacting, to these different initiatives that are being prioritized. So I think that's probably one of the main things that I see. And again, it's more from a acquisition standpoint that I'm speaking.
Right. Yeah, I've gotten a few press releases on that front, and it has been noticeable. It's been interesting.
Yes, it really has.
So yeah, definitely something to take note of. And then Rachel, going over to you, another audience question that I'm going to shift a little bit, but who's really leading this digital transformation? I mean, is this enterprise architects? Is this just like one of those it's on everybody sort of problems in government? Who is it on to lead this?
Well, I think, 21st Century Idea Act, I think it has been a big driver over the past couple of years, and the agency CIOs are the officials that are kind of tagged in that law. So, but in many agencies, the kind of the front end digital experience is managed out of a different part of the organization. So it's not necessarily CIOs that are leading this work. It's usually the directors of web and digital, and they don't necessarily sit in the CIO's office, but a lot of the CIOs have kind of delegated that work, and that's what we've done at GSA. Is we have our web team lives in the communication shop. We also have an office of customer experience and our IT shop, of course. And so all three of those teams are really leading this work. And I think, we have lots of tech people at GSA. And so, we have folks across the organization that have been working with them. And I think it's the same at the web directors at the agencies are really the ones that are driving a lot of this 21st century idea.
Definitely. And happy to report that 70% of people to the most recent poll said their agency's done a great job of emphasizing the citizen experience during this shift. So we can push the final poll as well, Alyssa. Since you all both are at GSA, I think this is a perfect kind of takeaway final question. The same one I'm asking the audience, which is on a scale of 1 to 5, how much does emerging technology play a role in improving your agency's citizen experience? So Chris Ann can start with you.
I think I'll go with a 4. So I think that it's greatly impacting. And I think, I'm talking a little bit more on a personal note, but again, when we go back to getting that bot that's going to do that sourcing for us, that's just going to change so much. And, I think that's going to really be a tangible benefit that will be able to be seen in what we're able to do. So I think we've had a lot of different bots that have been rolled out, and we've seen tremendous success with them. Something they were talking about earlier is using the documents and that information to just flow over to fill in again. So you're not constantly copying and pasting just to fill out another form. Those types of things are such a waste of time, going from the contracting experience. And then, so I see it just really making an impact throughout the agency.
Definitely. Yeah. And those are dollars at work. So no,
Yes.
That's right. That's so important to see. Rachel, same question to you, scale of 1 to 5, how much is emerging technology playing a role?
I think 3.5, maybe. I think that, we are, testing and adopting that, the more we can automate things, the better. It's, much faster and more accurate than having people do these things. So yeah, I think that's definitely having an impact. But, to go back again to my theme that I've been talking about is really the fundamentals, making sure that you have the right skills on your team. I think that's one place where we have some work to do. Is I don't know that agency web teams are always properly resourced. You have very specific skills that you need, and we don't have kind of a standard classifications for a lot of these technologist jobs for the federal government. So sometimes it's hard to hire the right people or understand the skills that you need for all these different disciplines, user experience and accessibility and, plain language writing. So I think the fundamentals are still important. Yes, the flashy, shiny new thing is always good, but, I feel like we still have a lot of work to do to get the fundamentals right. The federal government, unfortunately, I feel like we're always behind the private sector, but we shouldn't be. Like, we should be leading the charge, and we should be the ones that are setting the example for how to do this stuff right. And I particularly feel like GSA in particular should be kind of leading the way and helping elevate the rest of our federal colleagues and getting all of our digital systems to really be the best that we can be.
Absolutely.
That's how we conduct business now. It's critical infrastructure. So, we need to resource it appropriately.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, Chris Ann, Rachel, thank you all so much for joining me today. I thought this was a really worthwhile discussion for our audience, and I enjoyed it myself too. So thank you both so much.
Thank you so much for having us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, I'll turn it back over to you. I know we got a lot of other good content to get to. So thanks so much for having me.
Great job, Isaac, and the panelists. That was fantastic. Up next, we have our second Tech Talk of the day. And giving the tech talk will be Ben Joseph. And Ben is the Senior Director of Data and Analytics at ICF.
Hi, my name is Ben Joseph. I'm a senior director with ICF. Now, my background is with end-to-end data management, and this includes data engineering, AI/ML, data communication, hyperautomation, IT mod, and strategy. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about hyperautomation in an oversight context. Just to level set things, let's talk about what exactly is oversight. Now, oversight is an activity and it refers to the review, the monitoring, the supervision of federal agencies, programs, and policy implementation. Now, it's primarily intended to drive positive change among programs, and then it is also used to see if the programs are being run efficiently, are they really meeting the objectives, and they also check program integrity. And more than anything, I mean, they also try to see if it's really impactful to their citizens. And at some point, they also try to bring in a lot of innovation into the programs. So that's another arm that actually is part of oversight. And finally, if you zoom in a little further, you would notice that a lot of these activities are intended to prevent, detect, or deter fraud, waste, and abuse. Let's talk a little bit about how do we enable oversight, hyperautomation in an oversight context. It's not too different than how we do or enable RPA. So taking a few pages out of digital.gov's RPA playbook, here are a few things that I've listed which are pretty important. It starts with setting up your foundational components, which is infrastructure. So how do you actually set up a infrastructure that can take care of hyperautomation capabilities? This has to take into consideration your legacy apps that are out there, your cloud infrastructure where a lot of your modernized apps are sitting there, and the business processes itself and the boundary that you need to put around and the security parameters that you need to take into consideration. So all of this put together is your infrastructure setup. It definitely takes a little bit of time. And you also need to take into consideration like things like, okay, where do you run things that are in an unattended mode versus how do you enable attended mode automation? The next thing that we also want to focus is on use cases that are of high value. So, what is that process in order to identify the right use cases, and how can you actually advance or speed up the oversight process? Whether it is an audit or whether it is an investigation, how can you speed up that process? And then the discovery that goes along with this use cases, that's pretty important because you got to try and identify the right use cases in order to show the confidence upfront. The next thing is when it comes to hyperautomation, you're starting to stitch multiple capabilities in order to address your objective, which is fraud, waste, and abuse. So when we start talking about stitching multiple capabilities, so this could start from reading information from an operational system. You're kicking off another workflow to check an API, or you're actually calling an AI/ML model to receive a score, and then finally you're pulling all this information together in order to write something into like another agency's system. Finally, I mean, the other things that we also want to take into consideration is the stakeholder change management. So, consider a situation where folks have been spending a lot of manual time on certain aspects, and then all of a sudden that entire activities has been automated. Now, how do you actually take those people and how do you take them into like doing high value work? So that's another very important consideration when it comes to change management. Last but not least, the bot development lifecycle or the automation lifecycle. So a lot of times what happens is, I mean, we build a bot and we think that, okay, it is done once you deploy it. But that's where the actual work is starting. After you deploy it, you really got to maintain it. You got to monitor it for any changes, any subtle changes, because it is really dependent on a lot of other authoritative sources, plus the second party systems and third party systems. So how do you make sure that, I mean, it is really doing its job and it's not going back to square one? So that's another important thing when it comes to bot development lifecycle. I'd like to talk about a few opportunities in the oversight arena and then leave these thoughts with you. So, first and foremost, one of the common things that happens in an oversight capacity is the research activities that are very manual in nature. If you look at a lot of the investigators, if they are looking at a particular entity or a program or even other aspects of oversight, they might spend a lot of time doing research where they are referencing information from multiple sources, they're pulling information from the public domain, and they're trying to stitch and piece all this information together to find those insights, and then they want to kind of recommend next steps. So typically, people spend a ton of time. It could range from hours to days and even months in some cases, where multiple people are involved. So a lot of those manual research activities can be offloaded to automation. So things like getting information from a public domain, you could actually employ a bot in order to go get grab that information, because a lot of them are known sources or known like social media sources. You would probably use a bot to kind of scrape data or kind of get information from the right APIs. The next opportunity that I'd like to discuss is about the case management workflow itself. Now, um, typically the workflow is there is a tip line and somebody is calling into a tip line, and basically there is a case that is opened. So as soon as a case is opened, basically that's when the actual work starts. The investigator comes in, they get assigned, and they are starting to look at the case. And at this point, I mean, they're starting to pull information from all these different sources, and they try to see, I mean, is there anything that they can go with, right? So there is a lot of analysis that they spend. They also use a lot of analytic tools, information from different AI/ML models and all. Now, you can actually think of a scenario where a lot of this information can be pre-processed and it is really packaged, and there is like a briefcase that is ready to go. Okay, so as soon as the case is opened and as soon as the case is assigned to a particular investigator or an auditor, you could have an offline bot or an automation process that kicks off. It actually grabs all this information, puts it into like a tiny briefcase, and it is ready for this person to review. It just cuts down all the prep work that needs to be done. Okay. That's one. And then moving on. So once a particular person is doing a type of analysis, and they might need to go into like more granular analysis. So in this case, I mean, you could also employ virtual assistants, and this is where conversational UX comes into play. So you could actually have tailored conversation chatbots which could provide that conversational capability, and it could give you that information that is more contextual in nature. So things are right there and it is available at your fingertips. The other aspect is another opportunity that I would probably bring forth is how can you actually combine certain capabilities. That is one of the common things that you do is most of these oversight agencies, they have to go to all this other agent uh, um, the the systems that are actually out of their purview, and they had to grab data from there, bring it into their fold, then they had to put it into Excel or Access, then they had to analyze things, and then probably they had to do a lot of calculations, and then a lot of these type of activities happen very commonly. So you can actually combine a lot of those capabilities wherein you're extracting data from all the sources, the analysis steps that you're doing that can also be automated, and then finally even gathering insights, right? Some of those steps can also be automated, and it can be packaged in such a way that you're getting that end results, which could be a dashboard or some type of report or a risk score or whatever it is. All those things can be strung into like a hyper automation workflow. Last but not least, I mean, with all the advancements that are happening in the AI/ML space, I mean, there are more sophisticated models that are coming into play. Now, this is where you could actually utilize the power of unsupervised AI/ML, and you can unlock or unleash this in order to get faster results. So rather than go out and build a AI/ML model which takes like ages, you can actually employ a unsupervised method just to see, I mean, if there is something that we can go forward with. And then, I mean, based on this, I mean, you can make a decision like, okay, let's bring in more resources and, take a more deeper look. So these are some opportunities that I wanted to share with the forum. Again, I hope this was really insightful. Please do hit me up with any questions or comments, and my contact is on the slides. And I do want to thank ATARC as well as APN for giving me this opportunity to talk to you guys. Thank you. Have a great day.
Great, Ben. Thank you for that. And we will distribute these slides at the end, so you don't have to worry about that. And next, we are going to turn it over to Brandy Vincent. And Brandy is the staff correspondent over at NextGov. a component of Government Executive Media Group. And I noticed you guys changed all your branding and it looks pretty slick.
Yep,
How are you
we're
doing
now,
today, Brandy?
I'm good, Tom. Thanks for having us. We're now GovExec, a component of GovExec. Check out our website for more details on that.
Good stuff. Yeah, I will turn this program over to you. I can't wait to hear your panelists.
Cool. Thanks so much, Tom, for having us. And welcome to our audience to the second panel of ATARC Summit. We're going to chat with a few federal insiders who just showed up on your screen about what it's like shifting to a mostly telework environment and simultaneously ensuring that employees are satisfied and getting the most out of their experience. We've got a really great lineup here. We've got Nigel Alacock, who's an acquisitions analyst at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Alexander Rowan, who is also at FEMA, Director of Resources and Systems in the Federal Insurance and Mitigation Administration. And then Clarence Baker, who works in Human Capital and Program Management Professional at the Health and Human Services Department. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Before we begin, I just want to encourage the audience to submit questions along the way. At the end, we're going to have a Q&A part where you can ask them exactly what you're thinking, and you can do that at the bottom of the platform, just with the little Q&A. We also got some polls that we're going to have along the way, so we encourage you to interact with us that way too, to get the most out of this. And with that, we'll get to it. To start, for some context, I figured we would have each of the panelists just tell a little bit more about themselves and their work. So with that, I'd love to start with you, Clarence. Tell us about your expertise and what you're up to at HHS. And you're muted. Oop.
Yes, I was. Hi, everyone. I'm Clarence Baker. I'm the Director for HR Modernization for HHS. Out of the Office of Human Resources. What that means is we are basically looking over all of our HR processes and systems, and how can we streamline looking at data? How can we get data from A to Z? What does that mean? Also shutting down legacy systems. So part of my job is just that, modernizing HR from recruitment all the way to and those processes all the way to bot development. So it's a vast array of things.
That's great. Alex, what about you? What is your background and efforts at FEMA?
Hi, yes. Alex Rowan, Director of Resources and Systems Division here at FIMA. My background, as far as I've been everything from manpower, doing personnel management, to budget formulation, and then budget execution over at the State Department, and now back over to FIMA, where my team is responsible for all of the support services for FIMA's roughly over 1,000 employees. And so that starts from onboarding all the way through offboarding and basically everything between. And for employee experience, it is really just more than what we've been doing, is more than just the fancy perks, right? Like flexible work schedules or open workspaces or new and fun technology. It's really a more holistic approach of building an experience similar to what we've been doing in the customer experience realm, but applying that to employees and ensuring that we're approaching each of the touch points in which employees interact with customers, interact with leadership, interact with other employees, and improving those through tools, resources, and things like that. But it is over the overarching approach. And I really think as a team, that's going to be important as we transition into this more remote environment, and ensuring that we're getting top talent, that we have the top places to work should be the government and should be FEMA and FIMA. And so trying to make sure that we have that employee experience that lends itself to get and retain that top talent.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to get into the sort of cultural aspects of that in this conversation. And next up, we have Nigel. You're at FEMA. Tell us a little bit about what you're passionate about and your work.
Good morning, everyone. A pleasure to be here. My name is Nigel Alacock. I am an acquisitions analyst that works in the Federal Insurance Mitigation Administration within FEMA. And I passionately work to develop systems and processes and improve existing systems and processes that connect the dots between agency requirements and available resources from the perspective of government acquisitions. I have a long history of program management, having worked in both an operational capacity as well as a more back of the house format. So I bring a wealth of knowledge in trying to figure out how do we ensure that not just the agency, but the employees within FIMA get the resources that they need, identify resources that are needed and not available, and help to find ways to expedite and bridge that gap between the two to make sure that the agency and those employees can execute on their duties as best as possible.
Really interesting stuff. And it's cool to have two people from the same agency to sort of share each of their own perspectives too. But Nigel, I do want to stick with you for a sec because this panel is all about the modern workplace in 2021, which is still amid an ongoing pandemic. You were onboarded at an agency, switching roles at a time when most were working remotely. What was that experience like for you? What did the government do well? And what did you learn about maybe what it could do better?
Great question. So absolutely. So a little bit of background. I have been with the federal government for a little bit over 15 years. I recently transitioned from a little over a decade of working with the Transportation Security Administration in various capacities to the FEMA family. I transitioned in October of this past year, 2020. And it was quite an interesting experience. There was one, admittedly, that anxiety of having to have such a huge career shift after spending a decade with one agency and taking my talents to another. But there was also the logistics associated with what that virtual onboarding process would be. So it was very interesting. I really thought that FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security as a whole does a really good job at having solutions that are very people-centered and focused on not just what works best for the agency, but what actually works for the employees. And I think that really supports a environment where employees will want to stay and want to be more proactive and be more engaged with processes like employee onboarding. And as we'll probably touch on more later, some other processes as well. For me, it was a surprisingly seamless process. Like I said, there was definitely some anxiety there, but it was a very efficient process of identifying what are the core things that needed to be accomplished. But what I admired most was the level of engagement with FEMA personnel on the human resources side. It was a lot of proactive reaching out, a lot of email interaction, a lot of questions, and it was always a sounding board to ask questions, which I had plenty of. And that allowed for a very effective and efficient process to allow me to onboard and have and identify the resources I needed and the things that I didn't, and direct me towards very vital points of contact in a expeditious fashion. So I wasn't sitting here waiting for days without any knowledge of where I'm supposed to go or what I'm supposed to do. Very seamless, very smooth. And I think the takeaway from that was that what made that successful was that it was centered around me and what my requirements are as it pertains to the new job that I was taking on. And I think when not just the government, but employees as a whole take the person as the individual as the center of whatever those processes are, you already start off most of the way there towards that path of success.
That's great. And it's interesting too, because I feel like maybe one of the more difficult parts of sort of onboarding in this is really like developing like relationships or getting to know the people that you work with daily. So it's good to hear that more communication was better from HR and from those around you. In light of HR, Clarence, I know that's your wheelhouse and you've been really working on both modernizing and adjusting, but you guys had really jumped into gear, put up a portal that helped with recruiting and different sort of HR functions around the time of the pandemic. Can you fill us in a little bit about that and sort of any insights you can add to this conversation about recruiting, onboarding, and new hires in the pandemic?
Sure. We actually put up two portals. One portal was specifically for the pandemic. It was our COVID-19 portal where we could track employees. Are you in the building? Are you not? Teleworking. We also use that same portal because it was COVID-19. We use that same portal to house Peace Corps resumes. When the Peace Corps was called back from all of the other foreign countries, OPM gave them hiring rights. And so we pulled all of those resumes into that portal where our hiring managers and our HR centers, and in HHS, we have 9 HR centers that we, they're our customers. And so that worked out very, very well. In just a few short months, we had hired 70 off of that. But the other one was what we call HR Exchange. And the HR Exchange is a portal where we basically, it's one-stop shopping for all HHS employees when it comes to their HR needs. We have documentation there. We have service desk requests, access requests. We have a multitude of applications that we've developed in the ServiceNow platform, specifically around human capital. Emails now, where we used to do emails, they are now notifications, right? And so we have one application we call Hire Now. And Hire Now is an application where we share certifications, okay? The hiring certifications. We share the certifications and resumes across the whole enterprise and not just specific to an HR center. That has really cut the hiring time by more than 70 days, because now you, as a hiring manager, you have access, and you may not have to post for a program manager, project manager, a business analyst. Somebody else has already done that. Another HR center has already accomplished that. And so that has been tremendous. So with that, like Nigel and Alex was saying before, a lot of change management, a lot of communication, because the technology was moving faster than believe it or not, the technology is already there. But we have employees that are now spread out. They still have to do their job. So how are we going to get this information? How are they going to do their job? And I agree with Nigel. When you start with the employee experience, you're probably more than 70% there, because the technology is already there. Now it's just the whole change management process, and how is that going to change operations in your particular area? And so we've been very, very successful with that.
That's great. And it sounds like it's really about getting those resources to the most and the best people who need it. With that, I want to stick on this topic a little bit. We will get into emerging tech, which as an emerging tech reporter is my favorite. But first, Alex, this kind of touches on it, but in your role at FIMA, you're really tuned in to needs around shared services. How did those evolve over the last year?
So in the last year, we definitely had to develop some tools and resources that couldn't be delivered or otherwise were delivered via word of mouth, were developed and provided in person. And so, for example, we created a mentoring program. We stood up a mentoring program, and so setting up that inner office connection, we created a supervisor and leadership forum as well as internal teams groups so that supervisors as well as managers and then first line supervisors could connect on common issues that they were breaching. And so whether it was, mental health things like, documents and articles on how employees are adjusting, or say, for example, some people haven't had to use things like time management techniques and so getting these things out to people, but also then having the background of we did an in-house and created an in-house training program. And the training program really provides a base level understanding across a variety of topics. And so it's three offerings of a 2-day course in which we cover things from conflict management to project management to some of those things, and how to use the technology and the tools, because it was one of the benefits of all of this was these, like they said, the technology is out there, but it really sped up the need to use them right away. And so we've created, whether it's through Teams, whether it's through things like dashboards and using Tableau to report information out there, or we actually use a BlackBerry ad hoc system, and that is an instantaneous emergency notification system in which I can, in an instant, notify and get responses back from all 1,000 employees. And we've turned the traditional phone tree process, which we were getting 30 to 40 to 50% return on. Now we're getting 90, 95, 98% return on. And so it's the culmination of all of these things from a support services to then give all of the programs and everybody the tools and resources to build the employee experience in this new environment, because it has changed, and they just kind of have to make sure they know how to use it, how to implement it, the best way to implement it, and really be kind of transparent as we develop all of these things.
Yeah. Have you guys been thinking about like, how is customer experience different in this world? Like what are some key features of like the before and after?
Oh, that is a good question. We're trying, like I said before, we're trying to treat customer experience and employee experience and really begin with what is the journey. The map itself has changed. And so the points of connection that we had available to us, some of them have, I'm hoping that some of them come back. I'm hoping that we still get to go to conferences and things eventually, but how do we adjust? We did, for example, training programs. We hold training with all of our state and local partners. And so we had to pivot instantaneously from a in-person going out to each of the regions to a virtual format. And of what are the different types of working groups that are set up where you divide everybody out in different rooms. Now you're doing it within Zoom. And is it the same experience, or do you need to pivot these trainings that maybe you've been giving for some of these we've been giving for 15, 20 years, and being able to adjust all of that stuff. But it's really remapping the environment and seeing where the points of connection are between employees and customers, and then seeing what, if anything, needs to adjust, or do we have more opportunities to reach out to people and get that information and inform them, and hey, there's a grant program. Is there a new way now that people are more in touch with technology that we can now get that information out to them that we previously didn't have?
We're going to pivot now to emerging tech. Clarence, I remember when we were preparing for this conversation, you had mentioned something along the lines of before 2019, HHS wasn't really using bots. But since then, you've seen sort of a bigger interest in RPA. So how has that emerging technology made a difference, particularly over the last couple years? And any others that you want to speak to as well?
Sure. I think, and so let me caveat that if there were any bots being developed, I didn't know about it. Okay. But within the Office of Human Resources and with our HR partners in our HR centers, we had to change direction. And of course, we had to change direction because everything that was developed, and if you really think about systems, communications, documentation, networks, everything was developed for people to come to work in a building. And we had to change. So, and this is very key in anything, but especially when we're talking about bot development. So I'm just going to give you some data. We have 14 active bots right now. We saved and we have another like 11 in the pipeline. We saved over 20,000 hours. And we had a cost avoidance of almost $1 million. And we keep a running total of that FTEs, about 9.5 FTEs. Okay, that is significant. And so, you know, and I think what has also changed is how easy the technology is. You don't have to be a techie to be part of the new generation of processes and the new generation of technology to come out. You know, the software that we're using is UiPath for technology for bot development, and I've had a GS11, GS12 get in on the beginning of the training, just the level 1, and they helped the team develop a bot for X, okay, for different processes. So we have bots around reorganizations, changes in, anytime there's a change, or organization and code change, admin code change, that was a manual process. Now that's automated. And so now things like hazardous pay, performance awards, one of the applications that I talked about was Hire Now. We have a bot pulling the resumes from USA Staffing, okay, and making those resumes available. All right, and that's being done on a nightly basis. Lead restoration for COVID-19. We had different rules that come out about leave restoration. So we have bots doing a lot of that work. Now the individual, the 1 to 1.5, 2 FTEs that was doing that particular job, now they can do something else a little bit more strategic to the division or for the organization. And so that's crucial. That new technology, just one of the things, because I am on the program management side, and one of the things that was very early that came to a head for us, and it wasn't necessarily the new technology, but the implementation of the applications. We know, we are no longer doing the waterfall approach to project management and system development or application development. It's more agile now. Well, that changes. That's a game changer, because now the functional person, the business owner, is a lot more involved in the process than they used to be. They take a lot more ownership than before in the past when doing the waterfall approach. And they're almost in every step of the way. So now you don't have requirements, you have user stories. Okay. And what does that mean? So we had to, after the first few applications, we had to rethink how we introduce things, how we communicated, what education needed to be there. And so with any change, there has to be education that comes along with that.
Absolutely. And that goes too with that change management that you were sort of mentioning earlier. I'm always curious when I cover RPA, do you guys have a mechanism in place for officials from across the agency to submit ideas for RPAs or bots that would be helpful? Or how do you guys come up with the actual implementations that you're putting in place or deploying?
Well, we do have what we call a center of excellence.
Okay.
And there's people can send requests in for different bot development. But what we did initially was, where's our pain points? Okay, where is it causing us the most headaches, the most pain? And we started from there. We talked to the payroll people. We talked to the human capital people, the ones that's doing the processing. We talked to our HR directors within in the various HR centers, and so that's how we came up with the first 14, 11 in the pipeline, and then it's just a one-off. So we do have a center of excellence that's run by one of my peers, and within HR IT, and we have a whole submittal process, et cetera. And so what we do is we don't ever say no, because the technology is there, right? It's just a matter of when and where's the priority compared to everything else.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. Always open to hearing about new bots in place.
Yeah. And another, I'm sorry, just 5 more seconds. And what we do is we tell everyone we are willing to share. It's not exclusive to us. We're all the federal government. We're willing to share inside HHS and outside of HHS. We're willing to share.
That's great. I imagine it's a little tougher in an all virtual world, but there has been some newer mechanisms in place to sort of get those out. And even just events like this are good to sort of share the insights that you guys have had. I want to stick with this emerging tech topic for just a minute, and we're going to go a little bit out of order. But Alyssa, I was thinking we could do poll number 3. We'll see if we can get that one up. Which is on a scale of 1 to 5, how much does emerging technology play a role in improving your employee experience? And while you guys get your answers in on that, I was thinking maybe Nigel, from your perch with acquisitions and everything else, could you maybe talk a little bit about sort of that question? What role have you seen emerging technologies play in improving employee experience, particularly over the last few months?
This is a really great question. From the perspective of emerging technology, much like what Clarence was saying, the technology exists. But what I have seen is the focus more so in the shift in culture from not just how can we get the technology, but how do people interact with the technology? And to build upon that a little bit more, maintaining or establishing a perspective of innovative approach towards the technology, because going back to the point that the technology exists, but maybe the way we interact with it changes and has to constantly change given this new environment. With me, I'm in a particularly fortunate space because, like I said, I just recently onboarded with FEMA, and in my current space, admittedly, there's room for improvement when it comes to emerging technology. There has definitely been leaps and bounds. We've seen a lot of advancements with platforms like Miro or Microsoft Teams that allow, going back to this theme that has been a part of what we've been discussing here, is the ability to connect. But there's also the appetite as well as the opportunity to continue to build upon that and engage with the workforce. And Clarence said something just now that really resonated with me. With the shift in culture and the shift in vision from requirements to user experiences. And going back a little bit is prior to onboarding with FEMA, I was actually part of a really dynamic work group within the Transportation Security Administration, or the TSA, known as the Innovation Task Force, or the ITF. And my sole responsibility was to proactively reach out to our industry partners and quickly identify emerging tech or capabilities that could then be leveraged by government employees to help enhance their ability to perform their work, or incorporate some of that automation that we've been discussing, which allows them to shift focus to more strategic goals that the government agencies have. And from that experience, right before coming on board to FEMA, there was, I would say, almost insatiable appetite for quickly identifying solutions that exist or need to exist that allow employees to engage better in this current COVID-19 environment. With everything having been so or mostly virtual, what does that look like as we continue to traverse this current environment? And I think just having those discussions, those dialogues to help bring forth new ideas and new approaches and new strategic goals is really important, really vital to this entire process and experience.
Great. Have there been any sort of, well, first I'll say we have the results of the poll, and it looks like for the most of the audience, they've been greatly impacted. The least amount is not at all. So that's pretty interesting. Have there been policies or strategies that you have seen put in place that have really helped maybe speed up the deployments of technologies, anything like that that you'd like to see last beyond the pandemic?
Absolutely. Coming from the acquisition perspective, what I have seen with some of the more large scale government acquisitions that bring certain resources and pieces of equipment, I've definitely seen a drastic reduction in the amount of time that it takes to identify these solutions and actually have them deployed into the field or towards those end users. And I think that's fantastic. And I like that there's been more engagement with the end user and the customers as well, that the government services, to be able to identify what works best and to be able to add more value to those test and evaluation processes that go on. And because when it goes through the acquisition lifecycle, that test and evaluation and analysis piece is probably the most lengthy, as it has the most value. And I like that there's a lot more of a dynamic approach to those particular parts of the process, and that's allowed for a lot more capable systems to be used. And I also like that, going back to something again that Clarence said, is the better integration of human systems with technology that exists, that currently exists, to be able to have more of a strategic focus on what the changing priorities or shifting priorities are and how to forecast what those priorities will be in the near future and adjust for them and adjust accordingly.
Absolutely. I want to remind our audience members, if they have any questions, to get those into us, because we're going to go to them soon. But I want to first talk a little bit about the cultural elements, which they've come up across the board in all of your responses. But for many, their workplace environment became their home environment. So what were ways to ensure that people were still getting a work-life balance and satisfaction even in this shift? Alex, let's start with you.
Yeah, and this really, it was a big big hill to climb over the past year, because historically we've always had that separation of state and making sure that we don't let the two. And so you go home and you sign off. But as FEMA employees, we are always on call in some respects, or a little bit more used to it. But at least on the support services side, it was right, starting with the basics, right, leading by example, right, don't send emails after a certain point of time, connecting people, connecting across the divisions, and developing those interdependencies on, yes, I can answer your question, but if I refer you to one of my other team members, it builds that social connection, and you are directing that social connection while still achieving the same outcome. And it is really it has to be an organic growth in that. It is, how do we ensure that new employees like Nigel understand our culture? How are we giving them the understanding, hey, we are, for example, right, innovative and building on what's important, and put the employees first, and right, building those things beyond just your annual strategy. It is a more employee-based, understanding the full employee, the stressors that they incur, their family, their kids. You see kids coming through the background and being, going out and saying, hey, how are your kids doing? What are they doing remote? Are they doing okay? It is very easy even more easy for employees who historically may have teleworked and shut off and kind of gone in their silos, to further recluse back into that, not interacting with people. But it is building that showing that by coming on camera and by just reaching out to people organically, that builds a culture that spans not just being in the office, but also hybrid that we're going to.
Yeah, and I think sometimes those like little creative ways can go a really long way. Just within my own experience, our like company social platform ended up putting up like a pets channel where people just share pictures of their pets. And you have no idea like the joy as someone with no pets that's brought me. But now I can like recognize, something new of people in that capacity. So I'm all about hearing the creative ways or different tools that were put in place for that. Alyssa, I was thinking we could do the first poll now. How satisfied have you been with your employee experience with this shift to a remote and hybrid workforce? While we get those answered, I'm going to encourage the audience once again to submit some questions. And I want to turn one more question over to the panelists. This is the first one where any of you can speak up to answer. We'll try to make it as least awkward as possible. But were there any implementations, adjustments, or things that touched you directly, maybe use cases that popped up that you would really like to see persist much more beyond, that maybe could apply to other use cases, anything like that? Think about that.
Well, I can start off. One for me, last summer, I took place in a large scale cohort that was hosted in partnership with the Darden University in the Virginia area. And it was known as the Summer of Design. And what I found that was extremely valuable was it was a culmination of various amount of government employees from all over the US government and in various capacities. And we all came together with the mission of identifying potentially good ideas that could translate into policy or future policy to then have these various government agencies employ, or at a minimum, take a look at to kind of shape what that future is going to be like for their varied and dynamic workspaces. And I think something like that should now be the standard. Even when we get to a post-pandemic environment, I think the amount of ideas and collaboration within that cohort was just something that I will take with me, and I aim to try at my level to try to kind of iterate in some smaller capacity to have similar results. It was very fascinating of how effective it was. Aside from the opportunity to network and get an idea for what is going on in different people's workspaces and work streams, I think it was good with really honing in on the importance of people connecting with one shared goal as government employees to work towards something that will benefit us as federal employees as a whole.
Certainly. It looks like we have gotten some audience questions in, so I'm going to start with one. Back to RPA, we said there would be interest. I knew there might be. I'm very interested. Have you guys explored low-code RPA, bots you can build without coding, drag and drop, click to configure bots?
I'll take that one. I don't think that we're there yet because something has to be done to the bot itself. You know, the applications and software now, it's very configurable, highly configurable. So no, we're not doing that. We're running attended bots. And we are just now, along with some of our partners, other partners, and what I mean by that, HR centers, starting to do unattended bots. And so it's evolving. You know, that's an evolvement that we will get to, and I know that we'll get to that this year.
Absolutely. Another question, as work returns to the office, do you think there will be a lag in developing new bots, or will it increase? This person, Timothy Goodwin, said, I think automation efforts have increased in an all telework environment, and concerned people will fall back into manual processes and old habits. Curious on the panel's thoughts about that. Alex, I see a little smirk from you. Do you have a response?
I mean, falling back into the old habits is really it's very difficult. It's very difficult to not do it and to influence change in others to look at these tools and resources and look at these options for automating processes that they've historically done for decades, right? I have 15 people across my division, and I would say at least 5 to 10 of them worked a good portion of their career on typewriters. And so getting them to come so far is difficult, but how you do that is through building, it's building the tools and resources and structure around those innovations to automate those systems, right? It's really to go out first and meet with the industry partners and explain it in those plain language style. This is the benefit of these and where these can be integrated with current and existing systems. As we know, getting new systems implemented into the government is a process that is long and extensive and very complex, but being able to work within the system to make it work for you, to get these automation processes as part of the bigger system, and then having the structure and understanding across the organization is essential. Otherwise, unfortunately, I've seen it too often where some right out of college kid, it comes out with this great I've got the greatest idea. I'm going to do a bot and I'm going to create automation for this and that. And then, right, the older employees are often, the people who have been there for longer are often, we've seen this doesn't work. This is why it doesn't work. But you really they don't have the structure behind it to weather the storm of all the naysayers and all the people who are going to fight that resistance to change. And it goes back to your change management.
Right. And I'll just add to that, just give you again figures. Our first bot was November of 2019. And we now, like I said before, have 28. So it's going to increase. It's not going to decrease. It's going to increase for sure. And especially when because we advertise, we say, hey, if you want the bot, here it is. You can have it, right? We do that internally to HHS and externally. And what we're seeing is they're saying, hey, we want to see that bot. Hey, can we do this? Can we have that? It's just going to increase because there's a lot of just like Alex is saying, there's a lot of manual processes that's been going on for decades, and it's changing. It's changing, and the great part about it is it's a true partnership. Once they see the benefit, they're all in. But it's getting there.
Yeah, little victories along the way, right?
Correct.
I think this was a really fascinating conversation, and I appreciate you guys for your time this morning. I think at this point, I'll hand it back over to Tom. Thanks, audience, for tuning in, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you, Brandy. Great panel. Enjoyed it a lot. Now we're going to go to our third Tech Talk of the day, and we got a special guest, Mark Schwartz. Mark is the enterprise strategist at Amazon Web Services. He also is a noted author. I think your last book was The Art of Business Value. And of course, you were the CIO at USCIS. And I think you actually inadvertently kind of helped us with our growth of ATARC when we did the DevSecOps event. And you were our first chair for the first couple of years. And how are you doing today, Mark?
I'm doing great. Thanks. That wasn't inadvertent. What a great organization.
Yeah. Mark, we missed the last event that we did was the last in-person event. It was like the week before pandemic. So it's been the last event we've done too in person, but good to see you. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thanks. So I should explain who I am and what I'm doing. I have this role at Amazon Web Services as an enterprise strategist. And what that actually means is that I'm working with large organizations to help them with the non-technical aspects of transformation, which, as we all know, are sort of the hard ones. I'm talking about things like cultural change and organizational structure and organizational politics and governance and investment strategies, things like that. That are the challenges that tend to come up when you bring new technologies and new processes into an organization. So I'll talk briefly about hyperautomation today and how we think about it at AWS. And as a starting point, what I want to say is when AWS first pioneered the cloud about 15 years ago, it was about infrastructure. It was about compute infrastructure, storage infrastructure, network, and so on. Things have changed a lot since then. And that's really not the best way to think about the cloud today. Really, the cloud is a springboard for innovation, large and small innovations. I say that because what the cloud really gives you is access to resources, to building blocks, essentially, that you can use to find new ways to accomplish your business objectives. That's the idea, really. Beyond just infrastructure, there are all sorts of other resources that are available to you when you're working in the cloud. So as an example, think about the democratization of machine learning that has taken place. In the old days, if you wanted to try to put some machine learning into your applications, if you wanted to do some machine learning to add value for the people that you serve, you generally hired PhDs in artificial intelligence. You gave them a few years to work on building out some models. You tested them in your business situation. And at that point, you found out whether they were actually going to help you and have the business impact that you were looking for, or the mission impact. If you contrast that with today, today you can get machine learning services in the cloud pretty much off the shelf as resources. And they're often built around pre-trained models that already understand a domain and how to do, they have already learned about a domain. Let's put it that way, right? And if you need to go deeper and build your own models, well, there are great tools for doing that as well. So whatever your level of experience, availability of experts or whatever, there's something for you in machine learning available in the cloud and able to be integrated very quickly with whatever else you're doing, rolled out quickly so that you can see whether they actually add value in your mission area. You can get access to services like Amazon Textract and Alexa and Polly. We even have Amazon Comprehend Medical that already understands natural language that might come up in a healthcare context. The important point is that these tools are available, and they're available with a pay-as-you-go model, right? They're available as resources that you can use however you need to. But because it's a pay-as-you-go model, and because these resources are available quickly, you can try out new ideas, you can innovate, you can experiment, and you can do so very quickly and at low cost and low risk. That's really what got me interested in the cloud in the first place. It's low cost because when you're first experimenting, you're not using it at a great volume. And only when you scale up do your costs increase. So if you're just in experimental mode or just trying something out or just trying to prove that something has value, you can do it with very little risk. And then if you decide not to use the tools, you can leave them on the shelf. So that's machine learning. I just chose machine learning as an example. AWS now has over 200 different services. So in addition to machine learning, I'm talking about things like Internet of Things and edge computing, virtual reality, augmented reality, media, analytics, databases, all kinds of things. In fact, in a way, everything that's coming in the future, all emerging technologies, I figure they're probably going to be created for the cloud, since that's the direction that everybody's moving, rather than for individual data centers. So, and I'll add to that as well. Not only are these AWS resources available, but also on our on our AWS marketplace, our wonderful ISV partners are also creating tools that you can access with just the click of a button. So that's what the landscape looks like when you're working in the cloud. And these resources you can think of as building blocks. What's really interesting is when you start to combine these building blocks into a flow and use that flow to solve problems for your customers or for your internal operations, to automate portions of your value stream, essentially. And that's the world of hyperautomation, where you can take advantage of those building blocks, take advantage of the intelligence available through machine learning, of the data and the tools that you can combine together seamlessly to accommodate portions of your value stream. The real power, though, when I think about it, is that you can get access to these capabilities, these resources, in an environment that's fully managed and is reliable and secure. So all of us are in enterprises where these things matter, the sort of non-functional side of things, being able to deliver predictably and consistently and securely. And working in the cloud and with these various cloud resources gives you the advantages of what AWS has put in place for security and high availability and reliability. So in terms of reliability, we've built the cloud ground up with reliability in mind. We have in each of our geographic regions, we have multiple availability zones, multiple data centers distributed in such a way that they have independent sources of power and connectivity and so on. We actually, if you're familiar with chaos engineering, really that was invented at Amazon. The idea being to make sure that our systems are resilient, let's bombard them with everything that could possibly go wrong and make sure that they stand up reliably. So we've been doing that for a long time. We keep coming up with new ways to test and exercise our infrastructure to make sure it's going to be reliable. So it's no wonder that our nearest cloud competitor had 7 times as much downtime in 2019 and actually 40 times as much last year. We are all about reliability. Security, I'd say the same thing. We're leaders in innovating around security. We have our Nitro computing infrastructure separates what our customers are putting in the cloud from the underlying plumbing in a way that makes it more secure. We actually do, I think this is cool, provable security, where we can prove that certain things are secure, doing like a theorem proving, like we all learned in geometry. And we've got tools and other resources like Amazon Guard Duty that actually uses machine learning to spot anomalies on your network and so on. So this is the way that AWS really thinks about hyperautomation, is access to the resources that our customers tell us they really want. That's the services that we're building. Access to them as building blocks that you can combine in all sorts of ways to make powerful automation for parts of your value stream to deliver value to your customers or the people you serve or internal processes. And to do it all in this highly secure and highly reliable infrastructure, so that instead of focusing on all of that, you can be focusing on how you're serving the public better, how you're serving customers better, and how you're serving your enterprise better. So please go and innovate. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Hang on, Mark. One thing that we have a partnership with Amazon in our working groups where you're using your compute. I mean, and it really is very easy to stand up, and it's a great application. What's next for Amazon? What do you think some of the trends are coming up here in the next year or two that we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. First of all, sometimes it's hard to answer that question at Amazon because we drive 90 to 95% of our roadmap straight from what customers tell us they need. And of course, the obvious question then is, how about the rest of it? What's the last 5 to 10%? Right. That's usually the stuff that we think customers aren't asking for yet, but they will. So things like serverless computing, for example, where nobody had been asking for that, but wow, we realized the potential. So I think now we're seeing amazing stuff in machine learning. I'll give you a quick example of the possibilities. One of our customers is the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they do, what it sounds like. Using our machine learning tools, our image recognition in particular, they launched something that scours the web, the dark web, the clear web, for photos of these missing children. And they're able to, when they find a match, send a lead to law enforcement. This is just amazing stuff that you can do once you start working with the technology. So we're going to be supporting our customers when it comes to machine learning and innovating new ways to do that. We're seeing a lot of great stuff around edge computing and Internet of Things. Learning experience for me in some cases, since I'm not familiar with manufacturing. There's a great use case there around predictive maintenance. Instead of waiting for a machine in your factory to break down and then having the production stopped and high cost to repair, how about if you know in advance what machine is going to break down and you fix it before it does? And that's the kind of thing that you can do with IoT, edge computing, and machine learning. So those are some of the areas that we're seeing as the big ones right now.
Great. Yeah, I think that predictive maintenance is going to be a big deal from everywhere, from like jet planes to green government, building systems. But
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. It's always good to see you. I can't wait till we get you back in person.
Yeah. All right. I'm eager too.
You got it. Thank you, Mark.
All right. See ya.
All right. That was Mark Schwartz, enterprise strategist at Amazon Web Services. And now we're going to our third panel today. And we've got Jory Heckman, who now has a beard, I think. I don't think you had a beard the last time I saw you, Jory. Jory is
I've done it to mark the passage of time, but
yeah, yes. So Jory's a reporter over at the Fed News Network. Definitely worth a follow. He's always breaking news. You got to follow him on Twitter. Good to see you, my friend. Where are you working out of today? The home?
Working out of DC, working out of Chinatown. So I know I've been coming and going with these moderation opportunities, but presently in downtown DC.
You got it. Well, I'm looking forward to your panel. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tom. And welcome everyone to the final panel of today's summit, the last and certainly not least, where we're going to chat on some topics here in regards to implementing RPA within the federal government. And we have some great experts here to fill in some of the details. Just to introduce everyone, we have a great lineup here, including Anju Anand, IT Program Manager with the National Science Foundation, Erica Thomas, the RPA Program Manager over at the Department of Defense, and Michael Pascal, a title I've never heard before, but I love, Botman, in charge of robotic process automation over at USCIS, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. That's a real quick summary of their titles and what they do, but I'd love to give them an opportunity to provide a more fulsome explanation of who they are, what they do, and where things are going with RPA. Anju, I'll start over with you first.
Morning, Jory. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay, thank you for changing my name on the Zoom. It was showing Erica, so there were two Ericas there. Hi, my name is Anju Anand. I am IT Program Manager for RPA and NSF. I got involved with RPA program about 3 years ago. Our sister organization, Financial Division, had created unattended automation. They decided to start with unattended, which needed to be deployed on our infrastructure. So we needed to learn quickly. We needed to procure licenses for, we use UATAC at NSF. So we needed to procure licenses, procure orchestrator, unattended robots, set up tests, as well as production environment quickly to support their deployment. Over time, we learned that most agencies started with attended automation. So we took the harder path at NSF and started with unattended. At NSF, we use hybrid model for our Center of Excellence. We have a central COE within IT department, and then we have satellite COEs in various divisions and directorates at NSF. And we work in collaboration with each other to set up the next steps for our template standards, guidelines, and next steps for RPA at NSF. In addition to COE, we have a COP setup where there's a representation from each directorate at that COP. And we also have developers forum set up specifically for RPA developers. Where developers collaborate with each other, they share ideas, they solve problems, they learn from each other. So it's been a really exciting journey working with all of them. So I'm looking forward to continue to support them from central IT. And there's a lot more to share, but I'm gonna give it back to Jory and more to come.
Thanks, Anju. Great way to start the conversation, and I can't wait to learn more about these unattended bots. It's an unconventional journey, I think, when you think about other agencies and their journey with RPA. Erica, let's turn it on over to you and learn a little bit more about what DoD is doing with RPA.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm Erica Thomas with OSD Comptroller. So I'll be talking about our DoD Comptroller RPA program, but just to level set, DoD is very large. We've got a lot of RPA programs across the board. So what we did in Comptroller, we started looking into RPA about 3 years ago. So we set up our RPA program, again, just a couple of years ago, and it was under the guise of financial management reform. So how can we use new technologies, maybe not new in the broader sense, but new to government, new to DoD for sure, to improve our processes and to gain efficiencies and reform the way that we do business. So very quickly, we got into that and said, yeah, there is an opportunity space for this. Let's move forward. And so we immediately started piloting, and from those initial pilot efforts where we identified and partnered with some really good organizations to get a couple automation wins on the board to really show the benefit to leadership and to kind of help support and build the program. Since that initial phase, 2.5, 3 years ago, we have since grown to, we have a center of excellence now at the OSD Comptroller level that has two primary offerings. One of them is a cloud-based, I think you had Amazon on just before this, it's an AWS cloud-based RPA platform, shared service platform that anybody in DoD can join. It has two different offerings right now, both UiPath and Automation Anywhere. So what we're trying to do is where there might be hurdles or climbs that other groups may struggle as they're trying to stand up their own RPA programs, how can we eliminate some of those barriers of entry, some of those pain points? And within DoD, maybe it's not the case for all federal agencies, but at least within DoD, it's a little painful to get an ATO and sometimes to stand up that infrastructure. So as we stood that up, we knew that we had extra capacity. We stood that up as a shared service. So we were immediately partnering and had multiple groups in DoD on the platform benefiting from that. Not to say that there's not other platforms already set up in DoD, because I mentioned there's already other RPA programs, and that's totally great. It's fine. We're big. We can support that. So we have the shared service as a primary offering. And then I also have a small team of developers. So in addition to the platform as a service and a center of excellence, we also have a small group of developers that we will identify specific automations that maybe are near and dear to comptroller's heart, or near and dear to some of the organizations we typically have a lot of interaction with, maybe the fourth estate, for example. So those defense agencies and or any universal automations that touch financial management that just makes sense for us to get involved in. So we will take on automations that are either internally generated or potentially it's another idea that another group has came to us and we'll take that on. One of the things that I like that our team does is we'll develop automations, again, for a variety of groups, but sometimes we'll deliberately focus on developing an automation for one of those newer groups that's just getting started and they need to prove it to leadership. So when we look at that and there's a good use case that comes in and the group's looking to stand up their own RPA program, if I've got developers available and we agree the automation has benefit, we try to assist those groups as well to kind of get their feet under them so that their programs can grow.
Great. Thanks, Erica. Love to hear the scalability. Love to hear, big things coming out of the comptroller's office. And that's a story you hear a lot with agencies, that they begin with those quick wins with the financial management office and grow from there. So love to hear it. Michael, let's hear a little bit more about what is going on over at USCIS.
Hi, thank you guys for having me today. I'm Michael Pascal. I'm the program manager for the RPA Center of Excellence at CIS. And I can just say that seeing Mark Schwartz on there before we came on, I was like, is he staring at me through this camera right now? Because he's somewhat of a CIS legend. So it's pretty cool to be able to go on and speak after him. So we set up this program at CIS with the goal that we wanted to be able to bring, robotic process automation technology to everybody. I work in the chief data office, and what I did is I brokered a deal with our chief technology officer, Rob Brown, to say, we really realized how technology and data driven our agency was. So we wanted to make sure we had a way to make sure that it was consistently applied. Looking at the data elements across all of our agency, we saw that, no matter how much you used it, how much you flipped, dipped, tripped, and skipped it, it's all the same type of data being used across all of the systems. So we are leveraging RPA's technology capability to really make sure that data is applied consistently across the agency. So what we did is we made a center of excellence, which is comprised of, we set up this governance approach that would really make a repeatable process so that everybody had access to RPA capability. And we try to simplify it because we know that this could be kind of a daunting technology for people to see. It's fairly new to the government. And in doing so, we decided that, there are going to be people out there who don't necessarily have the skill sets or manpower, but they need this capability. So we set up what we call robotics as a service, where if you don't have individuals who are able to get trained up on RPA, we actually have a small team that can actually do the developments for you so that you guys can have access to this capability, because why shouldn't everybody have access to it, right? Let's share the fun. In addition to that, we also have a training program where we're actually training people to become developers, because I strongly believe that this is going to be another skill set that people have pretty similar to like the Microsoft suite, Excel, Word. We're going to start to see RPA be a lot more commonplace in the government. So I'm pretty excited to see as it starts to develop just across the agency. So it's kind of cool to be here and talk with everybody else about this. We've been really excited. I think I have one of the most fun jobs at the agency. I get to kind of dive into everybody's problems, and we can figure out exactly how we can improve their processes and figure out how we can automate it so that it can be something that, isn't scaring people. It's not taking away anyone's job. It's really applying a consistency into the way that we connect all of the systems in our efforts to modernize them. So it's really fun. I'm really excited to hear what everyone else says. So I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Michael. And there is no shortage of things to go off of just based on those introductions alone. And we are going to get into the Q&A section in just a second here. I do want to remind everyone who's listening in, please keep those questions coming in. We're checking them throughout the chat, and the 45 minutes, it goes by so much quicker than you think. And so I want to leave time to make sure those questions do get addressed. I think a good place to start, just based on everyone's comments, one common through line here that I think is really worth unpacking is this centers of excellence model, that this is something that we're seeing a lot more prevalent these days. And, this is, when you think about the journey in terms of years, this hasn't been a very long journey, but it's come a long way since we first heard RPA on the scene in the federal government. And so I'd love to, Michael, hear from you first, about how you see that centers of excellence model within USCIS helping to, scale up and reimagine what role RPA could have within your agency.
So, we colloquially, we call it, La Familia over here, because as part of the Center of Excellence, what we're doing is we're bringing everyone into their enterprise model. So we have a centralized approach at CIS, and our goal is to make sure that, automation is done consistently. And we assume that the only way that would work best for CIS is to make sure that we had a standardized and repeatable approach. So our Center of Excellence handles all of the intake from everybody. And what this allows us to do is understand exactly what automations are being done so that we're not reproducing things that have already been created. We want to be able to make people's lives easier and not overwork them. So through the Center of Excellence, we take ingest of everyone's ideas. We go through and we make sure that it's appropriate and there's not already, because RPA is not a solution for everything, but we want to make sure that it's being applied appropriately. And this allows us to make sure that as they go through this process in developing their automations, we can track to make sure that these are automations that can be reusable and haven't been created. 2, make sure that they're done consistently so that they can meet all of our security requirements. And 3, make sure that it's available to other people. We host all of our automations, all of our bots are cloud-based in Git and a Git repository.
Michael, did we lose you there?
I'm back. I was just giving you guys
okay. There you are. Okay.
Sorry about that. But I think one of the greatest benefits is understanding the value. And our center
Michael, I think you blipped out there for a second.
I'm sorry. I'll wrap it up so that I know
It's
my
okay.
computer's giving issues. But what we want to do is be able to track the value so that our customers know exactly how much time savings and cost savings they're given. So as a whole, our Center of Excellence can make sure that we're bringing value to the agency and we can kind of plan accordingly. Ideally, this would be a type of program that pays for itself, where we understand what the license requirements are for people, and we institute some type of chargeback model to kind of make sure that we can be self-sufficient in funding.
Awesome. We'll love to hear it. Erica, yeah, I'll throw it to you as a similar type question. Certainly when you think of large federated agencies, DoD is number one for sure. And I'd love to hear, again, with that Centers of Excellence model, how are you guys sharing the lessons learned, the best practices when it comes to RPA, and making sure that there isn't that duplication, there isn't that overlap, that people are in lockstep and doing this in a way that's efficient and is time savings and efficient.
Yeah. Great question. I think for DoD, we're always going to have those challenges, right? Just the size of DoD with the military departments and the fourth estate. We are not the end all be all center of excellence. There are other center of excellences within DoD. I think what we're trying to do from where we sit is, how can we corral, as many of those groups as we can to provide, some of that standardization, recommendations, what have you, with the expectation that these groups, will have their own independent RPA program. So we take a little bit of a different approach from what that Michael explained, in that, we don't have a completely centralized model. I would say it's more of a federated model, a volunteer force model. So groups that are interested kind of in joining our shared service platform, again, we have the we have the Center of Excellence. They can benefit from all the tools and the capabilities that we have. The orchestrators, the control rooms, the RPA analytics that we've developed to give them better management and oversight of their programs. Some of them want more involvement from us than others, right? Some groups, they simply want the technology stacks and the basic rules that they need to live by, right? So we have a service level agreement or a memorandum of understanding that the groups that connect to our platform sign. And basically it's got some of those high level things that, we're not going to dictate every single thing, that they're going to do in their program, but high level, if you want to use the platform, these are the base minimum things that we need to do. We need to make sure that you have separation of duties. So if you've got people that are developing, do you have another layer of people to do kind of a promotion or a review of that code to make sure that all is good, the design is good, it's meeting expectations, there's no security concerns, etc. So separation of duties is there, and a couple of other things as well. We layer in those basic rules and then let them go off and do their thing. So, for example, Army is one of the groups that is using our shared service platform. They have a completely independent RPA program. They had an RPA program before we did in Comptroller. They're using, our technology stack. So you could almost argue, Army has their own Center of Excellence and they're kind of abiding by our infrastructure rules. So that's one example. And then we have other groups that are just getting started. They don't have any of the framework, they don't have questionnaires or intake processes or anything else. And we're happy to support, any way that we can in that, even to the point where we're even doing the development work and all of that. So it really is a hybrid model for us. And really it's how do we help promulgate RPA across the department, whether it be just for the technology stack that we can offer, or even if it's more of the Center of Excellence support and all of those details as well. And piggybacking on what Michael said in terms of value, super important. I mean, the reality is you need to have visibility into the automations, into your digital assistants to see what benefit they're providing the department. And you can't do that if you're not connected to something like a control room or an orchestrator or something like that. For us, we're looking at it to see what are the overall benefits. So we want to look at labor hours redirected. We try to steer away from the term return on investment, ROI, that's a bad word. We usually try to call it return on effort, ROE. So we're capturing all of that, but we're also trying to figure out and probably mature how we can build the bigger vignettes. So what are those really the success stories related to automation? So it's the reduction in rework, it's the improved performance metrics, it's the whatever. And oftentimes, even when you talk to private industry of, hey, you've deployed all these automations, you're using RPA, what are the benefits that you're getting? Yes, they still have, labor savings. But they're not as significant as you would think. So I think, in the government, I think it's important for us to recognize the major benefits of RPA aren't necessarily, the cost savings. Those are a little bit down the list. But definitely, how do you put together those success stories, those vignettes, if you will, that help show the true story and the true benefit of RPA? So not only so everybody in the department, including senior leaders, can understand it and get behind it.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica. And Anju, I think that's a very similar model for what you described earlier on, that, much like what Erica just said, the COE situation at NSF, it's a COE amongst other COEs. Did I hear that correctly? I would love to hear more about how that COE model, one, works at NSF, and two, how that's helping NSF get off the ground with bots and automation.
Thank you, Jory. We have, in IT, we have a very small team who is mainly responsible for infrastructure, maintenance, deployment of infrastructure, and deployment of the upgrades. Most recently, we are doing the Tableau dashboarding, that type of central implementation. Our satellite COE in our various offices at NSF, there are other COEs, like finance has their own COE, HR has their own COE, and some of the directors, science directors also have their own COE. So we call them satellite COE. When it comes to prioritizing intake process, like Michael talked about, there's a centralized process. However, at NSF, each of those COE have their own intake process. They do prioritize because they have team of people who are creating automations there. So they do the prioritization. They decide which one is the right automation to do, and then we within DIS, which is the Division of Information System I'm part of, we have a CCB. We follow for all our applications across the board. And for obviously for RPA, we have something called automation catalog. So anybody picking up an automation to create, they make an entry in automation catalog, and we talk to them to better understand what is it that they are trying to accomplish at the central COE. Based on the systems they are touching, based on the modifications they are making, based on the type of automation they are creating, attended or unattended, there are steps identified and followed to make sure that all the right parties are in the loop. If somebody is creating an attended automation just to help their own process and does not impact the legacy application, doesn't read the data, doesn't write the data there, then that doesn't need to go to CCB. However, if they are reading the data from either our data warehouse or other data repository or updating the data, then it goes to CCB to make sure that all system owners are in the loop. So we do work with them hand in hand. We have spent a considerable amount of time setting up the standards, guidelines, making them available to all the users, best practices, just like Michael and Erica said. And obviously there are certain must-haves, must-do steps everybody needs to follow, but most of them are guidelines for them to follow. Since there are different satellite offices, there are different developers working on them, we are not syncing up their design. However, we do want to make sure that they're following certain standards and guidelines and making sure that our code is maintainable in the long run. So from COE Plus, we also have standing meetings with them to make sure that anything they need from the central COE is addressed in a timely manner. So we have set up a large structure around that. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the big thing we do is for unattended automations, they all need to go through the central COE because that's where the infrastructure is. So we got our union rep as well as IT security involved early on to make sure that all unattended automation, as they will be using their own credentials with a minimal viable access needed for each automation, that is approved by security ahead of time before people invest time and energy into that. So there is a very consistent model we are following. One big thing I have asked everybody to do is, as they are going through the steps, looking at the guidelines, following the standards, if something doesn't work for RPA at NSF, do bring it to our attention, and then we discuss it and see what is the right way to, what are the next right steps, and we modify it. So it's like agile process.
Wow, awesome. And again, awesome to hear more details about those unattended bots and all the steps and precautions that are being put in place to make sure those run as best as possible. We're going to get into more of that in just a second here, but we're first going to get into a survey question. Alyssa, if you could please put up question number 1 here for the poll. And that question is, how satisfied have you been with your agency's ability to implement RPA within your agency? We'll give everyone just a second to fill that out. Let's see how we're looking here. 37% is the number one response here. Satisfied, 37% satisfied, and a little mixed on everything else. 21% indifferent, 26% unsatisfied. But the majority here either is satisfied or is just whatever. So with that, Erica, I'll turn it over to you. I would love to hear more about the unattended bots and where things stand with DoD on that. I know that's going to be a different story no matter where you're looking within DoD, but from the comptroller's point of view, and perhaps maybe some of those fourth estate agencies, I would love to hear an update there.
Absolutely. We are really excited to get to unattended. So we started with attended, and frankly, I think the majority of DoD agencies that moved out on RPA or have in the past couple of years, they started with attended. That was an easier sell. It was easier to get started. You know, hey, it's using the person's credentials. Somebody is monitoring it. They're running the automation. They're running the digital assistant. So we started with attended, and I would say kudos does go to DLA, so one of the fourth estate agencies. They have implemented their unattended infrastructure. I think now they have close to 100 automations now that are unattended, which is amazing. And they have the infrastructure set up for their own RPA program within DLA, which is amazing. And they've got their own center of excellence as well. For Comptroller and the shared service platform that we have been in the process of standing up our unattended infrastructure for a while. It's taken, I would say, longer than I would have liked. There's been some challenges, particularly, as we've dealt with, our IT, cyber shops and getting them kind of on board and understanding, the capabilities of the technology and the limitations. So this is not, fear of, bots gone wild or anything like that. There is structure, there is order, and this is how we can kind of protect and keep them satisfied. So we're in the process now of standing up our unattended infrastructure that will be a shared service or part of our shared service platform. Fingers fingers crossed, I will have that up and running. We'll have our IATT for that in June. So in a couple of weeks, we're really close. And we're really excited to get started on that and start moving out on unattended and get more than just DLA on the unattended map in DoD.
Awesome. Well, certainly an ambitious goal there, and it's something you certainly want to get right before fielding it. So very exciting things just on the horizon there. Thanks for that, Erica. And Michael, I'll throw it over to you. You know, is that something that is on the radar for USAS, the idea of unattended bots?
You know, I can feel the heat from that question. I can feel everybody over here asking, like, where's my unattended bot? Why am I still pushing a button? What's going on over here? I think that's our path right now. We've been working primarily with attended bots. And I think, you know, from a security and trust aspect, that's how we're trying to gain the trust of our security personnel. You know, there've been breaches and people are scared. You know, anybody who knows, you know, automation knows that like bots have been around outside of the government. Anyone who's even tried to buy a PS5, right, knows that automation and bots have been around forever, right? But in the government, we're really looking to be able to service a larger net of people. And right now at attended bots, we're able to handle a lot of transactions and functions between systems. I think people have been satisfied with the ability to just apply this consistency, especially in COVID. Like Eric was saying, we spent a lot of time building up our infrastructure also. This was a long process that we learned from. And actually we shared a lot of our, you know, DHS has a great community of practice that we share a lot of information with. I think that everybody is really excited for unattended bots. And it's funny because you start to kind of see the way that they can be applied, not just at the click of a user who needs to perform a function on their schedule, but on a wider scale that can handle, like I said, we're very data driven. We process a lot of intake from applications. To be able to handle like batch files on an unattended schedule would really transform the way that we can handle the immigration process. And I think our IT shop is really headed in that direction. They're kind of focusing on that. So we focused initially on like back office and mission support operations, kind of like human capital and training functions. We kind of moved to operations and looking to get into like procurement. I think they're going to see that, you know, as we can like move towards unattended bots, you're going to see a lot more data being able to be handled in the background without people having to worry about it, you know, and they can kind of focus on the critical thinking. So I think that's what people are excited for.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, like I said earlier, you know, this is not a one size fits all journey for all agencies. You know, there's different needs, there's different tempo to everything. And so, you know, I love to hear the variety of different perspectives here. You know, with that, I'm going to throw up another survey question here with Alyssa's help here. And so that is going to be coming up in just 1 second here. How far along is your agency with implementing RPA? And here we are coming in at 54% rather. We have started to implement RPA within our agency, and that's pretty much taken up a majority of the conversation here. Not a lot of people saying that they haven't thought about it or not knowing. We have fully implemented RPA within our agency at 17%. Those are good numbers, I think. I think that's a real good indication of where things are headed and where things are currently. You know, Michael, you touched on something, and you all did really, this idea of building trust with the bots, building trust in the automation. And that goes for, you know, the public facing side of things, whoever your customer is, whether that's the public, you know, whether that's other agencies, but also building trust within the agency workforce, right? The idea that, you know, this is augmenting their work, this is getting the drudgery out of their work, and that they're able to focus on the higher order, you know, thinking and the things that they genuinely like about their jobs, able to do more of that. That's probably two big ideas to throw into one question, but you know, how do you augment that work, and how do you get employees to trust and actually want to be a part of this automation journey? Whoever wants to take that, I'll throw it out to everyone.
I can start off with that. Oh, go on, ladies first, please.
Sure. I know for us, has been very much about messaging. So how do you go out and get the enthusiasm from the people that are actually doing the jobs that can benefit from this? And that's been, I think, the big challenge for us. I joke, me at the OSD level, I'm a paper pusher policymaker. I actually don't do a lot of standard repetitive. I put out fires all day. So I'm not going to be able to come up with those really great ideas without the buy-in from those communities. And you need to absolutely figure out what you're messaging into those communities. This is not about, again, getting rid of jobs. This is about how do you find those opportunities where you have the standard, repetitive, mundane type things that are really eating people's lunch. And maybe there are other things, other more cognitive tasks, more challenging tasks, more rewarding tasks that these people will want to go after. So for us, it's really been figuring out the messaging on that and making sure that folks are comfortable. This is not coming after your job. This is to better and improve your work life. This is a workforce multiplier, not a reducer.
Awesome. And Michael, I think you had some thoughts there too.
Yeah, I think it starts with, so it's funny because, you saw Botman and that was my attempt. We don't really have a marketing department over here. Marketing RPA is actually, it's a funky animal because you have to really trust the people. You have to have faith in the people, and one, that they're, everyone's kind of nervous, like, let's reserve this. This is typically born out of IT and CFO shops. And at CIS, we've done a great job of really turning that over to everybody and giving them an opportunity to come up with ideas. And what we found is, one, giving a demo of an automation, everyone's like, that's it? Like, that's it? It's like, well, yeah, it's faster. They're like, okay, they're expecting like an Avengers length movie or something theatrical. So, but what I found in this is that a lot of people are coming to us with ideas and trusting the people. I'll give you an example. We have a WebTA uncertified time card process that basically we have a timekeeper who has to make sure that everyone's time cards are validated every pay period. So that's 26 pay periods every year. And, every time I see an email about it, I'm like, Jesus, did I not fill out my time card right now? But in trusting the people, what they did is they improved the process where this individual had to represent 18,000 people, make sure that all their time cards are certified, and email them, their timekeepers, their supervisors on a bi-weekly basis. And that took about 26 hours to do. And working with these guys, they said, you know what? I have an opportunity to improve this process. Why not use Tableau, just like everyone else was talking about, and be able to just have a chart and display individuals in each organization in CIS instead of having to go out there and email everybody. And what we did is we automated this process so that it downloads a file, it scrubs the file, picks out people who haven't filled out their time card, loads them up into Tableau, and just visualize it. So you have like an on-demand dashboard. And that's something that just being able to develop a bot doesn't give you that type of insight. It's really the people who are pushing this, and they're coming up with these ideas. So I really think that, and that process took us down, just one process took us from 26 hours per pay period to 24 minutes. Just doing that and trusting the people, that invites buy-in, because they start telling their coworkers about it. Like, man, let me tell you, my life's a lot easier. And during COVID, nobody wants to be inside sending emails. So I really think that's been the key to kind of advancing this forward.
Yeah, everyone likes easy. Easy's a good sell. And, Anju, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Let's take it from there on building trust in NSF. And it sounds like these use cases are really an easy way to build that trust. If you have anything like that, we'd love to hear it.
So at the NSF being a science organization, we have a lot of scientists, PhDs, doctors there. So they find many different ways of automating their own processes or try to make their life easier or augment our grants processing at NSF. So selling them for an automation or creating an automation from trust point of view is a little bit easier, I feel. It's just that finding the time to identify the use cases and then allowing people to to take time to automate and use RPA technology to automate those use cases. As I mentioned earlier, in IT, we have small organization. I have a very small RPA team. So my marketing of RPA at NSF has been very slow and intentionally controlled that way, because once we start getting all the use cases, I won't have team to automate them. So we are slowly reaching out to different offices within NSF and see if they are willing to spend their resources and train their people to start using automation. So we have had some success there. Like I said, finance, HR, our sister organization, administrative services, our other science directors, they are taking on more and more of this role. So from that point of view, marketing for me has not been really gone full-fledged. I am hoping to do lunch and learn type session to answer their questions and educate more them on it, but that's been intentionally slowed down from our end. One thing again, as you probably noticed, that I don't call them bots, I call them automations at NSF, not to confuse them with unattended and attended bots, tool set given by the vendor. Similar to that, we don't refer to them as digital employees. We refer to them as digital assistants. So that way they are here to help us. And when you talk about ROI, we address them productivity gains, as how much productivity gain we are having in automating certain processes. And it's not necessarily that how much time or effort will save. It also has to do with some strategically addressing low-hanging fruit to convince people to be able to trust them. So that this is what it's doing. It is doing same thing over and over again, and that's how it would build trust. One other thing you had mentioned earlier in reference to credentialing, is this a good time to touch on that, or want to come back to it?
Well, we'll get to that in just a second here, but I do want to make sure we have time for our third survey question. Alyssa, if you could please get that ready to go here. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much does RPA help further IT modernization within the federal government? We'll give everyone just a quick second to fill that out, and then we'll start wrapping up things here, because believe it or not, we are at that 45-minute mark already. I told you it goes faster than everyone thinks. All right, and so we're a little all over the place on this one. 36% says that RPA has greatly helped to further IT modernization, and then we're at 27% each for RPA helps slightly to further IT modernization, and same for moderately helping IT modernization. So a little less consensus on that one, but Anju, I'll let you finish on your point that you were making there just before we got to the survey question.
I just wanted to mention on credentialing, because that seems to be a big concern, and I've heard multiple times that question at federal COP. We with IT, working with IT security, we have come up with saying that each automation, unattended automation, would have its own credential. And that way we will only grant minimal viable access to that credential. So that way, if whenever we do roll out that, so we know exactly in the logs, it has its own ID. In the logs, it will track which automation or which process, which ID processed those transactions. And that would make it easier for the auditors when to explain to the auditors what's going on by which automation. So just wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, that is an important piece. And we did have some questions cropping up about that. I think that pretty fulsomely answers that question. Erica and Michael, we are running down on time here, but I do want to give you an opportunity to get a lightning round, 1 minute. And as far as closing sentiments, what do you see as far as what's on the horizon? Where do you see the art of the possible going here in the coming years?
Sure. So for DoD, again, I'm really excited. We're seeing RPA really kind of catch fire and start to expand, moving into unattended, and that's amazing. So hopefully we'll have some really good progress in that in the next year. I also think that we're seeing some opportunities now and some pilots. My own group has done one ourselves where we're starting to kind of combine RPA in conjunction with other technology. For example, the pilot we just did is machine learning. So how can you use RPA with other technologies to get an even bigger footprint and even bigger success? So I'm excited to see those opportunities start to expand in the future.
Awesome. And Michael, it looks like you're gonna have the final word here.
I mean, that's a hard response to follow up right there. I definitely think that the artificial intelligence and machine learning that's literally priority for us right now. We're very heavy into that. I see us really trying to reevaluate the way that we can look at data and how quickly we can look at it. I think that we're going to start to see a lot more digitization of data for us specifically going forward with RPA. You're starting to see that this is really a low cost, minimal risk technology that's going to help to really improve our technology connections a lot faster than taking month-long lead times to modernize technology. And on the horizon, I see us really starting to track all of the progress and start to actually understand the connectivity and the processes between all of the systems, how they all work together, so that we can understand that and make sure that we're doing our processes diligently. And I mean, you can already see that it's on the president's agenda, so it's going to be heavily embedded. And I'm really, really excited to just get it in the hands of more people.
Awesome. Well, a strong note to end on there. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this topic today. Please, everyone, give a virtual round of applause to all of our panelists. They certainly deserve it. And they did a great job with unpacking what's going on here. And with that, Tom, I'm going to turn it back on over to you.
Yeah, great panel, Jory. Thank you for the panelists. There are so many great points. Erica brought up a good one that I've been approached by a lot of companies. How should I posture technology modernization fund? I like the return on effort. That sounds so much better than anything else I've heard. So I might borrow that one, Erica. Thank you for that one. And good stuff. Well, we're almost done. We've got one more power tech talk coming up. So great crowd. You stuck with us this long. We just got a few more minutes left. And I'd like to bring on Herb Van Hook. Herb is Vice President over at BMC. And they've been a fantastic partner with us. Herb, you want to get your video on? We got you there, Herb? All right. 1 second. Okay. And how are you doing today?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you absolutely fine.
I'm not sure why it says Herb Van Hook there, but it's Ray Scalia, and he is able to hear everything, but he's not able to see, and he's not able to present. We're not sure what's causing that.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure. We tested this. He can't.
I'm seeing that it shows he's in a meeting on Skype, and I'm not sure, he's not Skyping right now. I'm not sure if he's trying something else, but he had reported that he was not able to get in. It was requiring him to register. He kept going around through a loop.
Okay.
And that he said it was just, he had to go in through the web interface, and he thought that was going to work, but.
Okay.
Let's see, there's another Herb Van Hook.
Let's see if we can get him on. Do we have the video, Alyssa? Maybe we can just, there we go. Okay. All right, Herb, how are you doing? We got you in? We got the presentation. Hopefully he called in. That would be great. He can call in using the dial-in. Maybe that's the easiest since he's presenting anyway. We see you, Herb. Okay, mine came on.
Tom, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, my friend. How are you doing today? We got a little technical difficulty, but I think we got a presentation. I think we're cooking today. We can hear you fine.
Hey, that's great. Yeah, can you see the presentation?
We can see the presentation.
Okay, that's great. So let me take it from there. I'll just leave the presentation up. Good day, everyone. My name is Herb Van Hook with BMC Software. I work in the Chief Technology Office for BMC Software. I'm the Vice President of Strategy for BMC. And staying with the theme of automation and hyperautomation, I'd like to take just a few minutes and talk about how those processes and technologies and themes really apply to the central IT organization within agencies, within businesses, enterprises. So I'd like to talk about automation in the modern digital organizations that our CIO-led organizations are today. What we're seeing in the industry, and this is driven a lot also by what's going on in the consumer world, is a democratization of automation. We've heard a lot today about RPA, robotic process automation, and a lot of the technologies there are to put tools in the hands of people that are perhaps not, they don't have deep technical skills. They may not be programmers, but they can still use automation technology to do all sorts of amazing and new things. And the same sort of impact is happening within central IT shops as well. In fact, some of the key automation trends that we're watching and that we're participating in for IT organizations are AI-driven automation, that is automation driven by artificial intelligence, machine learning models, deep analytics, data-driven automation, automation that's driven via insights and findings that we might find through extensive data analysis, and then things like RPA, the low-code, no-code platforms. These are key trends that we see in the automation world. The term of hyperautomation has emerged just in the last couple of years to tend to reference this type of automation. That is automation that leverages advanced technologies to automate tasks that were once completed by humans. So I think we've heard some of that today. I'd like to take some time now and tell you how that sort of reflects back on the central IT organizations. One way to think about this is there are hundreds of automation tools out there. There's lots of automation technologies, everything from using very basic scripts to detailed programming languages to do automation, to platform tools, to one-off tools, things that are unique to particular industries or particular process areas. But broadly, we can think about automation as applies to our agency processes, our business processes, and even the types of industrial automation we're seeing today. A lot of this is driving things such as robotics. On the other side of this coin is the automation that's going on, leveraging the next generation of IT technologies, whether it's cloud-based infrastructure, whether it's new types of application architectures, there's new types of IT processes. There's a lot of automation going on around that area. In fact, one of the newest things to emerge is something that is referred to as site reliability engineering, SRE. This discipline, this set of models, grew out of work that started 15, 16 years ago at Google, as a matter of fact. Google consolidated all of their thoughts and their advice around this model and came out with a book in about 2016, and you see the cover of the book on the slide. And the thing that drove them to this was, hey, with new types of technology models, new types of technology infrastructure, and the ability to drive change and velocity, and the ability to drive new applications much faster than ever before for people in IT, there had to be a way to manage that high rate of change and still achieve stability in systems. So what you see on the right, by the way, is just a graph of the job postings mentioning SRE, and you'll see they took off about 2016. In fact, if you look at job postings on Indeed.com or Glassdoor or any of the major job sites, you'll see that SRE is kind of come to the forefront in terms of what people are looking for in terms of tackling this problem of reliability and stability in a high rate of change environment. So the reason I put this up is if you look at the site reliability, the SRE kind of concepts from Google, the idea was that the people that were SREs would devote more than half of their time towards driving automation, towards writing code or using automation technologies, but trying to reduce the amount of work that humans did within IT. In fact, in the SRE world, they talk about the vocabulary they use is they talk about reducing toil. In fact, this is one of the key things you'll see in SRE type job postings. Like, hey, we need you to be able to come in and be sort of an automation guru for us and to be able to implement repetitive technology-driven processes to reduce these repetitive human processes we've had in the past. If we look at a lot of the automation technologies out there, whether we're talking about business or automation or IT automation, the core components of technology are very, very similar. There's often an orchestration engine at the heart of it. There's a way to design an automation workflow, for example. There's often a way to then monitor or control that automation as it's executing. The automation tool very often has integrations to the outside world. In other words, the hands to control the knobs and levers of what the automation can operate over. And then there can be out-of-the-box content, like sample automation workflows, unusual interfaces that may appeal to a certain audience. So this is a very, very common high-level architecture of virtually all the automation technologies that are out there. I want to shift the narrative just a little bit and bring it back to what we're doing at BMC within our internal IT organization. So a number of years ago, we decided to focus on automation. And if you think about the responsibility stack, the different organizational structures within the IT organization, you'll see something like this. We'll have a few people responsible for infrastructure and application architectures, a number of people responsible for systems engineering, a fairly large group focused around the day in, day out operations of our systems, and then a team of folks that man the service desk to support the employees at BMC and our partners using our systems. And so the high level goals of automation here was, hey, let's take a bunch of tools that we know that we're going to use to deliver automation within our IT shop and think about it three different ways. At the front end, how do we use automation to change the work we're doing, right? The second phase is how do we use automation to move the work to really lower cost fulfillment engines? So if you look at the stack here, the people at the top, the architects, are generally higher cost staff members. Engineers, fairly expensive. Operations, less so. Service desks, while we pay them well, they're at the lower end of the labor cost market for us. So how do we move work using automation towards the lower cost delivery model? And then better yet, how do we use automation to completely eliminate the work? So this was our philosophy, and this was our model we've used for a number of years. Our CIO, a fellow by the name of Scott Crowder, introduced this and has really used this as an anchor point to drive his people to do more and more with automation. And one of the key points here is, okay, that's great. You can do that. Can you measure it? Is there a value inherent in this? And we believe there is. So if you can measure what an hour's worth of someone's time is valued at, and use automation to eliminate that hour, then you've got an ROI measurement. In fact, we maintain a dashboard internally that measures across all the automations that we have implemented. And we can see how many hours, for example, per quarter we've saved. We can plot the savings over time, and we can translate that into real dollars over time. So we take the component functions that automation addresses and extrapolate that to a measurement over time across different categories. And we maintain a dashboard on this, we report on this, and we justify the use of automation. What I'd like to do for the last couple of minutes is shift and take a look at the future and where automation plays a role there. We at BMC have a vision of what IT is going to look like 4, 5, 6 years out. We actually call this the autonomous digital enterprise. You can tell from the name it's greatly derived and greatly driven by automation. We feel that powered by an evolution in business models and operating models, combined with transformative technologies, organizations, whether they're private, public, government organizations, aspire to become autonomous digital enterprises. And you'll see at the core of this, the outcomes of this, is greater centricity around stakeholders that we serve from an IT perspective, also actionable insights based on all the data we're generating, and agility, the ability to move fast and also respond to change quickly. And so there's 5 operating model characteristics we've identified and 5 technology enablers. I'll share with you just a couple of things here. If you're interested in this from BMC, you can go to our website. We have a long white paper on this topic if you're more interested in it. But what we're seeing, just a couple of things, is the various groups that are not central IT organizations are becoming more and more technology savvy. They're understanding more what you can do with technology, and they're making choices around technology themselves. We're also seeing innovation occur in an extreme sharing economy across ecosystems between public and private, between government and industry. We're seeing those kinds of things happen. If we layer onto this the technology enablers, you'll see those 5 things show up there, and they're really anchored by the one on the top right. The idea of pervasive automation, both within IT, outside of IT, business processes, operational processes, government processes, citizen processes, pervasive automation up and down the technology stack and across all the process models. And I think that's actually the overall message you're hearing here today in this full day focused on hyperautomation. So with that, I'd like to thank you. Thanks for your time. I think we just had a few minutes here, and hopefully I hit my marks.
No, this was fantastic, Herb. Just some of the points you brought up, I always think of Peter Drucker. I guess it's his quote: "If you can't measure it, you can't manage it." So I like that aspect of it, that you can measure it. How would you put the U.S. federal government as compared to other sectors like financial or education or healthcare? Are we ahead, behind, close? Where would you put the federal government on adoption?
It's probably in the midpoint. You have to remember, Tom, a lot of the organizations out there, especially in the finance sector, telecom sector, these are extremely heavy tech organizations. Their IT budgets are enormous compared to their overall revenue stream. And so much of what the government has to contend with is technology is really important, but the government has a lot of other non-technology services they have to fund and provide for. So I think the government's doing a pretty good job. There's been a lot of shift in the thinking about technology in the government, I would say, over the last 12 to even 15 years. We saw a number of years ago the large data center consolidation efforts, for example, in the federal sector. we're seeing extremely advanced ideas around technology leverage from our defense agencies, and a lot of that then filters back into the civilian agencies. And we've seen a shift toward the types of things that citizens demand from the government. Citizens demand a technology interface from the government, and we saw this in the large projects around things such as healthcare.gov, which has turned out to be a sustainable success there. So I would say the government's doing a good job, but in terms of the level of investment you see at the high end of the commercial sector, especially things, as you mentioned, finance organizations, I would say government's probably middle of the road. They're right in line, probably where they should be. Could we be more aggressive? Yes. Does it cost more? Yes. So, budgets are always a consideration.
Great. Well, thank you for that presentation. I found it very, very interesting. That was Herb Van Hook. He's Vice President over at BMC. And thank you for that. And that closes the program today. We want to thank our partners, Appian, Amazon Web Services, BMC, and ICF, all of our panelists and moderators. And thanks for sticking with us. It was a very illuminating day, at least for me. I'm hoping you guys got half what I got out. I think it was pretty productive. Thank you very much, and we will catch you the next time. Have a good Memorial Day.